Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Before we get tonight's show, I don't like calling it a show, discussion. Before we get tonight's discussion started, family, you know I always like to bring forth to the community solutions, right? Solutions or initiatives that will empower our community. Right now, family, you're looking at the website for Conscious Ingenuity Institute. We offer multiple youth empowerment programs. Our first program, I always say this is my first baby, is Conscious Ingenuity, where we utilize science, technology, engineering, art, agriculture, and mathematics to build character, confidence, and capabilities. I keep telling you all, my goal, man, I'm talking about nation building. My goal is to nation build and make sure that I do this with the next generation. Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong men than to, I think it was to heal broken children or something like that. It's easy to build strong children than to heal broken men, something like that. Don't get me for butchering this quote, but you know what the great ancestor Frederick Douglass said, and I firmly believe that. And we got to make sure that we arm our children with the knowledge, the skills, the character, and the mindset to nation building. So that's what conscious ingenuity is all about, family. And then we also have the virtual UACI STEM camp. Shout out to Baba Amin and his lovely compliment, Mama Nkoyo. We came together, we founded the virtual UACI STEM camp, where we give our children a virtual STEM learning experience that is top tier. This summer, I'm pleased to announce we had over 40 children who joined us literally from New York to California. We sent them Chromebooks, we sent them microbits. We also sent them Tinker Kits. So these children were literally online. The first half, they were learning about African history and culture. And then the second half, they're learning about STEM from an African-centered perspective. And so they were also exposed to the fundamentals of programming, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cybersecurity, and more. So, family, if you missed the summer cohort, please be sure to get your child enrolled in the winter cohort. Next up, we have the Asafo training camp and the Agoji training camps. These camps are in-person camps located in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay. They start on July the 27th and end on August the 2nd. Okay. And these are in-person camps. But look, if you don't live in a DMV area, don't worry about it. You can always grab an Airbnb or a hotel. As the young people would say, pull up. You could always pull up and kick it in Baltimore with Dr. Ma'ai and the PLM family for a week to give your son and daughter an experience of their lives. They learn, these kids are exposed to character development or character enrichment, cultural enrichment, life skills, critical thinking, conflict resolution, and more. And look, I probably shouldn't even be sharing this with you all, but I'm actually working it out with Baba Imhotep and some of my students over at Morgan now to have the boys and girls learn how to build their own solar panels. So we're doing some beautiful things with our youth, and I hope that you will join us. All you have to do, family, is head on over to consciousingenuity.org. And let me throw that in the chat. Let me throw that in the chat. Conscious Ingenuity. Hold on. Let me throw that. Let me do it up here. Shoot, I'm trying to throw it in the chat and can't do it. Consciousingenuity.org. Again, go to consciousingenuity.org. All right. So without further ado, I bring to you a warrior, a scholar, a great husband, a great father. I look up to this brother, man. I had the honor of going out to Ghana and meeting him, meeting his lovely compliment, meeting his mother, meeting his children. And I remember looking at him, and I just looked at him and I saw, I hope he doesn't get offended when I say this, but I said a beautiful black man, beautiful black African man. That's what I saw standing in front of me. And I looked at him and I said, OBENFO, you're a wealthy man. And he just looked very humble, brother, very humble brother, but he's a warrior. Don't get it twisted. Humble brother, but he's a warrior. But you know who he is, family. Without further ado, the next voice that you will hear, well, you're going to hear my voice first, then you'll hear his. It will be from OBENFO Obadeli Kambon.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classics. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
A BB Fahodie, a BB to me, a BB Wan. Peace to all of my thinkers, truth speakers, and truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to the community, OBENFO'S Kambon. How are you doing tonight, warrior?
BB to me, a BB Fahodie. I'm doing Black Powerful, Blacktastic, and Blacknificent.
Ashe. Family, right now, I want you all to take a moment to thumb up this video. Thumb it up, okay? And also share this video. We want to each one teach one, right? We want to each one teach one. Remember the African proverb, people are people because of people. Ashe or Ubuntu, I am because we are. So let's share this video. Let's get this information out to the people. Also, family, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. And also, family, make sure that you watch some of my Truth to Power talks on my playlist. It's on my channel. I brought on a lot of our warrior scholars, so make sure that you go back in the archives. As a matter of fact, OBENFO, you've been on. I think this is probably like your third or fourth time on. So you all can go back and check out those discussions. But I know I say this every time you come on, OBENFO. I need to get on a BB to me and we got to make it happen. I know I say it. We got to make it happen where we begin to port all of these talks over to a BB to me and then just live stream, on a BB to me. Let me ask you this, though, OBENFO. On a BB to me, do we have the ability to live stream on multiple platforms? Like if we want to do a BB to me, let's say YouTube, Facebook, IG, do you all have that capability as well?
So just a BB to me. So when you're live streaming on a BB to me, you're live streaming directly to a BB to me. No cracker platforms. And that's actually intentional.
I got you, OBENFO. Look, OBENFO, one of my comrades, shout out to Dr. Holly. He's over at University of Michigan. He sent me a video and I didn't know you were going to be in it, but he sent me a video and he said, check this out. And you were a part of a discussion. It was you, and then it was like several like Ghanaians. So it was basically Black Americans who repatriated, and then it was Ghanaians who were there, and everybody was kind of sharing their experiences and how they felt. And you had some Ghanaians were like, look, you all are coming here. We're leaving out because we're looking for jobs. And then they're talking about how when we go there, we're driving up the prices. But then some Black Americans. So it was a really great discussion. But one thing you said, and you on there, and I texted him back. I said that's one of my comrades OBENFO right there. And but one thing you said a lot, but it was one thing, there's multiple things that actually resonated with me, but it's one thing I'm gonna bring up. You talked about the power of language and you shared your journey, right? You shared your journey, how you got there. And then you discussed an interesting story. You were saying that how when you got over there, you were looking for a house and you said that they didn't know that you knew how to speak tree. And you knew it. You could speak it and you understood it fluently. And the brothers were trying to get you for a couple of dollars. And you said you just kind of went with it at first. And then, towards the end, you started speaking to them in their native language. And you talked about the power of language. Could you expound on that? Because I know outside of that, I know that was, the anecdote that you brought forth, but language to know other languages, specifically our indigenous languages. Could you speak to the importance of that, the importance of learning Tree and Yoruba and even, the Mejuneta? So what is the importance of that?
So it's interesting you bring that up because that actually is what inspired me to go ahead and speak on the topic that I'll be addressing today. So that was put together by DW. Of course, they have Black people as front people for it. And, essentially, they were saying, oh, we're going to do this. It's not going to be a debate. It's going to be a conversation. But then in the title, the original title they gave it, it said American returnees. And before we even got on there, I showed them my Ghana card, my Ghana passport. I said, all of us are naturalized Ghanaians, but they decided that they'll get more airplay because of controversy, and they'll make it seem like, so in Ghana, people think that, oh, the whole thing about Liberia, the war in Liberia, Sierra Leone, is that American returnees or, British so-called returnees came back and they thought they were better, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've actually spoken on this before. If you look at every conflict on the continent, the major variable is not diasporans who've come back and thought that they were better. So if you look at Hutus versus Tutsis, if you look at, Eastern Congo, if you look at, Sudan, right, the Janjaweed, if you look all throughout the continent, what they all have in common is they have resources under the ground that these crackers don't want to pay for. If you look at southeastern Nigeria, it's oil. Again, Eastern Congo, that's what they refer to as coltan. Northwestern Niger is about uranium. So anytime you find conflict, it's just like what happened in during the times of chattel enslavement. It's because you have crackers who are going to play one fragment against another fragment, and that's the core of what the whole presentation that I'll be dealing with today is about. That if you think that you're a fragment, you think your other people are fragments. Meanwhile, your enemy comes and say, "Y'all all look like one thing to me." Well, guess what? Guess who's going to laugh all the way to the bank? So that was one thing, and then also the comments to that. You had so many people in the comments. They said no one was stolen. Africans sold Africans. Nobody was stolen. Africans sold. Like every other comment was saying that because the host, the presenter, said, it's been over 400, 500 years, whatever it was, since their ancestors were stolen. So in the comments, like every other comment, and I was like, wow, these got to be the most ignorant people on the face of the planet Earth. Because I'm sure not a single one of them who said nobody was stolen has ever heard the name Antal Gonzalez. I'm sure not a single one of them has ever heard the name Nuno Chestao. I'm sure not a single one of them has ever heard the name Lancero de Freitas, and I'll go through who all of those are. If I mention that to them, they'll think that, oh, that's the new burrito at Chipotle. They'll think, oh, that must be something new on the Taco Bell menu. No, if I mention these names, then I'm telling you the ones who actually came up with the idea that we now know retrospectively as transatlantic enslavement. The very idea, and I'm going to look at, I'll show you what the primary sources say. And, this is the thing, YouTube commenters are not in agreement with primary sources, but guess who wins?
Come on.
If up on a heavyweight, championship fight, the primary sources are going to knock out the YouTube commenters
all the time, every time, OBENFO, every time. And it's crazy. Like you're looking at those comments and I'm over here fighting, so you have this whole, they call it the foundational Black American delineation movement. So as soon as you talked about fragmented, right? Like when you're fragmented, your people can come in. So right now, initially you had Yvette Carnell and somebody else. I forgot the dude's name, but I know he's a lawyer. I think his name is Antonio or Tony, but they came together. They formed this organization called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, right? And they were saying that, that the purpose of this was they were trying to accomplish or achieve lineage-based reparations. So they were saying in order to do that, you had to delineate from just calling yourselves Black, right? Because if you just say I'm Black, then that connects you with Black folks in the Caribbean, Black folks, on the continent, and other Black folks, throughout the diaspora. So they came up with ADOS. Then ADOS was moving for a little bit, became very popular. So then Tariq Nasheed, he came up with the foundational Black Americans concept. So now that's taking movement. So now you have a bunch of Black Americans, and this could be just online, but I see a lot of it online. So you have a lot of Black Americans saying, look, we want to delineate. We want to delineate. We have been in America for 400 and 500 years. We've become our own ethnicity. Don't call me African nothing. I don't want to be, I'm not that. I'm just telling you the mindset that I've been dealing with, OBENFO. Don't call me that. Don't call me that. don't call me anything African, right? I am this is the word, foundational Black American. That is my lineage. My lineage is here. My ancestors have been here for centuries. I'm not African, nothing. So literally there is this movement over here where you have foundational Black Americans who are saying that they do not want to really they don't identify with their African brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora. So much so, and I'll land my plane, Benfo, so much so that the Essence Fest just took place. And a lot of Black Americans are making videos. They're saying they're upset because they're saying that the Essence Fest was created to celebrate Black American culture, not African culture or Pan-African culture, basically, or diasporan culture. They're saying that it was made for us and by us, and they feel like I think it's a sister now she's a continental African. I know she's from the continent, but she's in the leadership position for the Essence Fest. And they're saying that it has like a Caribbean and continental African flavor. So people are upset about that. So what are your thoughts? And I know this is going to tie into what we're going to talk about, this whole idea or this push now that Black Americans or foundational Black Americans need to delineate from our brothers and sisters in the diaspora?
Well, first off, I'm not an advocate of reparations. I'm an advocate of retribution, which is, I guess you could look at it like reparations, but reparations in blood. And that is to say, if I talk about, for example, I'll give you one example, Mary Turner. So this is a sister whose husband was killed wrongly, right? He had nothing to do. They said that another brother had killed, a cracker. And her husband was killed in the backlash, that happened because of that. And she knew, the crackers who did it. And, she said, shouted publicly, she said, I'll take all of y'all to justice, I'll, so forth. And what they decided to do, and she was heavily pregnant, I think it was something like 8, going on 9 months pregnant. And what they decided to do, they captured her, they tied her upside down, they took a knife and cut the baby out of her belly. As the baby fell to the ground, they used their boots to stomp on the baby's head, and then they riddled her body with bullets. I can go on, but the point I'm driving at is that, what's the dollar amount for that?
Right. What is
I'm just talking about one person.
Yeah.
Is that $1,000? Like, are we bargaining? Is it an auction? Going once, going twice? Give me $2,000 for that. All right, give me $1,000 for that. Like, what are we doing? For me, $1 million is not the payment for that. It's not about, for me, reparations. It's about retribution. So that's a different thing. Okay. But yeah, in terms of, you and I have spoken about just the term African, and we're going to go into that as well. That one, that's a Roman term. So what we used to call ourselves in classical Kemet was Kemetiu, which translates to Black people. I'm actually going to talk about this, thing that you're describing going on. But essentially, all of these things are, on cesspool media, because the ones who own the cesspool media platforms are the ones who make sure that the algorithm in blues keeps it going. Right. So we know for a fact that during COVID, if you said something about vaccines they didn't like, they would shut down the hashtag. They would shut down your account.
Absolutely.
Like that. Anything that they see is not in their interest, they can shut it down just like that. So you have to ask yourself, why are they not shutting down? I'm one fragment and I'm against another fragment. Why will they never shut that down? Because it works in their own interest to make sure that now, instead of Hutus versus Tutsis, or Bloods versus Crips, now they have the continental versus diasporan. And the same way that this is what got us into this position in the first place is, I think I'm one fragment and I think you're another fragment. I call myself, Asante. You call yourself Anglo. I call myself Yoruba. You call yourself, Fon. I call myself this. I call myself that. So we think that we're all fragments, but at the end of the day, they're saying, get in the boat. Whatever you get in the boat.
Right. That part of Benfo.
So let's go into the presentation. You mentioned the power of language, and that's definitely something that can speak to, because it's an entirely different world once you speak, the language. And, you have people who can come here and they'll be here for however long. They won't learn anything. But again, it's an entirely different language. So that's why on the BB2Me since 2006, we've been teaching Chi online, Yoruba, Wolof. Chi is what I teach at the University of Ghana. I also teach Yoruba, Wolof, Medu-Neter. I also teach Medu-Neter at the University of Ghana. Because, it's very important. It's an entire worldview shift. And this is even to the point that when you say African, it doesn't mean anything. Even the Romans, where we got the term from, you can't break it down. You have I've come across at least 12 proposed etymologies of where it may come from. Ifriqiya, Ifran, Afrique. We can go through all of those different proposed etymologies, but none of them tell you what the word Kemet tells you. This is the land of Black people. And once you understand the significance of names for us, then it tells you this is why back in classical Kemet, we built walls, which are referenced in a text called Sanhat, to keep non-Blacks out of the land of Black people. Also, those walls are referenced in the priority of Imahu Neferti about keeping non-Blacks out of the land of Black people. We didn't call them whites. We called them Amu, which has a connotation of foreignness, or we call them Sechetiu, which is anyone who is not Black, who comes from that continent that we now know as Eurasia, that all of them are Sechetiu. So it's very important for us to have our own names, because you hear a lot of people say, oh, we should have our own names. They're going to change their name from Larry or, Donna or whatever to, names of our own people. And we're willing to conceive of that on an individual level, but we've fallen behind in terms of doing it on a collective level. And it's just as important, because when we look at classical Kemet, when we call ourselves Kemetiu, that translates to Black people. And we were most successful when we said, you know what, we're all Black people and we have common non-Black enemies, right? We were most successful in Haiti when we did the same thing. We were most successful in Jamaica when we said cleave to the Black, right? We were most successful when we decided, you know what, we're all Black people and we have common non-Black enemies, and we're going to whoop that non-Black behind. And our enemies know this. The ones who are on cesspool media saying, I'm a fragment, you're a different fragment. The crackers know this. They know that, if you start saying we're all one thing and let's whoop that cracker behind. And that's my problem with the thing of people saying, Africans, so Africans, amongst other things, is that the problem was we didn't see, like, even they're trying to say, the issue is that, I'm an African, you're an African, and you betrayed us, where, we're all Africans. The problem is, I thought I'm a fragment, I thought you're another fragment, and that's the whole thing. If we even get to the point of betrayal, we've gone beyond where we are right now, where we've been, because to even betray, it means I think we're all, one thing. So that's what we're going to go into. So I'm going to share my slides.
Hold on, before you share your slides. Yeah, and I've said this multiple times on this platform of OBENFO. I said our ancestors didn't even see themselves as one people. It was no concept of we all African. No one had that mentality back then. And so that's why we always have to keep things in this historical. We always have to keep things in its proper historical context. And a lot of people don't do that. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say, on a bb2me.com, the classes that you teach, do you have to get in at a certain point, or can you join anytime? Like, how does that work, OBENFO?
Yeah, so we have a schedule of classes. So you can go to the site, you can go into the shop, and we have all the classes mapped out through the end of the year. So anybody who is interested, the classes are 8 sessions. They go across the course of a month. So yeah, you can definitely check it out. They have set start dates. And whenever you're ready, you can say, okay, I want to get in on that start date, and you can become a part of that. But just to, the point that we have had times in the past where we said, you know what, we're all Black people, let's go against, these, crackers. But even back then, we have people who are like, no, I'm a fragment, right? So this has been an ongoing thing all the way from the foundation of classical Kemet, where you had some people who are saying we're all Kemetiu, we're all Black people. You had others who are saying, no, we're Wawat, we're Itjet, we're so forth and so on. And that's actually covered in the Stela of Sarah Kamos. So this isn't a new thing, right? The idea of some people saying, you know what, we should see ourselves as Black people against common non-Black enemies. And then on the other side, people who are saying, no, I'm a fragment, you're a fragment, I'm going for self, blah, blah, blah. So this has been going on for at least 5,000 years, right? of documented recorded history. And my point is that we've done the best when we say, you know what, we have common ancestry, we have common descent, which translates to common interest. And on that basis, let's come together on the basis of that common interest in order to, fight, defeat our common enemies, right? And again, this is what I refer to as the Dikenga cycle of Black consciousness, where when in classical Kemet we say we're all Black people, then we're doing quite well, right? And, in the second, you have the first and second stela of Sarah Kamos. He actually talks about someone named Teti, son of Pepi. And here is somebody who is trying to go for self, right? And according to Sarah Kamos, he said that, Teti, son of Pepi, made his town of Neferusi as a nest for the Amu. So we're trying to fight collectively as Black people to drive these non-Black Amu out of the land of Black people. But here you have somebody who's actually internal to Kemet, who is literally allowing those non-Blacks to make a nest, right, metaphorically inside of Kemet, which again means the land of Black people. So he said, I'm going to slit his belly open, right? I'm going to take war to him. And then after, they're able to drive out the Hakal Hasut, the Hyksos, then he turns his attention, he captured a letter, and a letter is coming from these non-Black Amu again to the Nahasyu, which is referred to, contemporary, we'll say, those are the Nubians, Kushites, so forth and so on. But Hin Nefer, right, which is south of the nation state of Kemet. So he captures this messenger with a letter, and in the letter it says, "Oh, greetings to the son of Cush, the son of the ruler of Cush." He says that you should come north. There's nobody who can stand up to you. Come north, and then once we defeat Kemet, the land of Black people, then you and we can split the towns up amongst ourselves, right? So you got way back in classical times a cracker who is saying divide and conquer. Here are some Black people, here are other Black people. I'm going to get you to look out for your own self-interest in order to divide up the land of Black people. So me, cracker, I'm going to get some. You're going to get some. And this is what's going on. So this FBA ADOS is not a new thing. But we haven't ever been served well when we thought I'm a fragment, you're another fragment. And that's what got us into this situation in the first place. And crackers know that that's what got us into this situation in the first place, which is why they always are going to make sure that, y'all are going to stay on cesspool media and they're going to keep manipulating your consciousness. It's the rat in the Skinner box. You're going to think that you're thinking for yourself, but literally they are using operant conditioning. They're giving you rewards and they're giving you punishment. So all of this is in the presentation. So I think we should probably go to
Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll.
Right. Let's see how much we can get in on it. All right. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, I can.
Right,
can you hit can you hit the hide button down the bottom? Yeah, cool.
Okay, so this is the presentation, African Soul Africans and the Slavery and Other Fairy Tales That Keep Quote Unquote White People Safe. You'll notice that the white is lowercase. So this is what, the FBA ADOS people think, when they say, African Soul Africans and slavery. Like, here's one guy, I'm an African. Here's another guy, I'm an African too. And, the crack was just walking by, window shopping. He didn't have anything to do. Like, hey, I have something for sale. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's an African. Right. So this is what they have in mind. Right. Oh, I'm not doing anything with my child. Here's an African. So, if you want, I just have them for sale. Like we're just sitting in the bush somewhere, who knows where. And, we're bored. We don't have anything to do. We're just like, let me go sell some Africans. But what ends up happening is what you see down here. Right. The marionneteer and the marionette, where, this one says I'm continental. This one says I'm diasporan. But the cracker says, I'm pulling the strings for all of y'all. Keep fighting amongst each other, because as long as you do so, you're not going to turn your fists up to knock me in the chin and knock me out. So yeah, y'all keep that up. We love that, right? We continue. And now I'll go into a definition of anachronism, a person, thing, or idea that exists out of its time in history, especially one that happened or existed later than the period being shown. Error in chronology, a person or thing that is chronologically out of place, a state or condition of being chronologically out of place. And then you see the etymology to refer to the wrong time, so forth and so on. So, this is what we're dealing with. It would be like someone saying the Chicago Bulls sold the Boston Celtics into slavery. And
Mm.
you'd be like, well, hold on, the Chicago Bulls didn't even exist at that time. Well, guess what? Neither did the term, African, right? No one was sitting here like, oh, I'm an African. Y'all are some Africans. Let me go and sell some Africans. So
Exactly.
it's an anachronism. And people would be probably pretty quick on the uptake, even the YouTube commenters, some of whom, I don't want to insult, everybody in your audience, but, some of them are really, let me just say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't, force them to drink. What some people do, they'll look at the title, they'll start commenting, and they are going to miss all the primary sources. They're never going to find out, who Lázaro de Freitas is. They're never going to find out who Antal Gonzalez is. But again, these are the ones who had the idea of what we now know as transatlantic enslavement. And they were the first ones to kidnap Black people. So everybody who's like, no one was stolen, no one was stolen, no one is stolen. I'm just saying, that tells me you've never heard the name Antal Gonzalez. You've never read the Chronicle of Acts in Guinea. And we'll look at all of that.
Yeah, and OBENFO, like the Portuguese, they didn't hide it. Like you said, it's primary sources for this information. But go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, but YouTube commenters aren't interested in primary sources. They're interested in keeping crackers safe, right? And that's what it ultimately breaks down to, is that I remember they had a album by the Fugees where they had like an interlude where it said it's easy for cats to kill other cats. It's just the dogs they got trouble with. And if they actually started to blame crackers for what they did, well, that means, guess what? It means you have to do something about these crackers.
That's right.
And because they think that that's impossible, they said, you know what's easier? Let me go and beat up on some other Black people, right? So that's really what's at the core of it, is that they don't want to confront the crackers. They don't want to deal with retribution. At best, they want to beg crackers for money, but none of them want to deal with, you know what? The crackers did this and we need to do something to these crackers. That's beyond what they are ready, willing, or able to do. So, they're hiding behind all these other narratives of FBA, ADOS, blah, 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 just because they don't want to confront these crackers. But let's go straight into it. So again, the rationale for the presentation is actually that DW Street debate that you saw. The phrase African soul Africans is an anachronistic fairy tale. No one self-identified as African during the transatlantic Mangamizi, 1441, 1888, or really to the present. Political, ethnic, linguistic identities were paramount and still are. Quote unquote, whites are able to profit from diaspora and against continental conflict. In YouTube comments today, DW, just as their forebears were able to profit from quote unquote tribe against quote unquote tribe, leading to prisoners of war during the anti-Black chattelization war. So the transatlantic Mangamizi disaster began with direct quote unquote white raids and kidnapping. Antal Gonzalez in 1441 marks the precedent, and we'll look at the primary sources where it's actually documented, where quote unquote whites came ashore specifically to capture Black people, not to trade. And again, non-Black so-called white and Arab involvement was systemic and total, not passive. They financed, built ships, established transport routes, armed raiders, ran dungeons, sold, bought, insured, justified, and profited from every level of enslavement. And this is to the point, because some people in the comments were like, oh, I can't come to Africa because Africans sold Africans. Well, I say, well, guess what? If you can't come to Africa because of selling, how can you stay in the place of selling?
Come on, that part.
Initiating, ensuring, justifying pseudoscientifically, legally, religiously, nakadalika. Well, I guess you just got to hop in right into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Exactly.
Because if you can't come here, so-called Africa, which really should be called Kemet, Abibimain, Ila Dulawa, the land of Black people, well, guess what? You can't stay in the place of buying, selling, blah, blah, blah. So in propaganda, as I call it, like Africans, so
are you
Africans,
a bit more, are you still on the same slide, or you move to a different slide?
I'm still on the same slide.
Okay, okay. Just want to make sure. Okay.
So in propaganda, like Africans, so Africans absolves white/Arabs to shield descendants of enslavers /kidnappers from divine righteous retribution. That's a quote from my father, Nana Kamal Kambon, who used that term, while misdirecting Black people's anger at each other. So it's not post-traumatic, but persistent traumatic or present traumatic. This is just a bit on the etymology. The reason why we use the term enslaved rather than slaves, amongst others, is because slave is coming from the root of Slav. So you can be enslaved, which means you've been put into a situation analogous to that of the Slavs. But again, as Black people, you cannot become Slavs. So that's just a little bit of background. Again, I mentioned this term anachronism. I won't go back to it. We've already defined it. But this is examples of what is anachronistic. So, you have this little FBA ADOS kid who's like, oh, in 1619, that was the first African Americans. Okay, well, who won the NBA championship in 1619? Because I know Black Americans, they're real good at basketball. And then you're like, no, that's anachronistic. There was no NBA back then. So he's confused. He's like, well, I know Black Americans and descendants of slaves like to do cookouts and have step shows and go to the barber shop and the beauty salon. So, is that what they did when they got off the ship in 1619? You're like, no, little kid, no, that's anachronistic. None of that existed back then. It's like, but I know what Black Americans do. So, how can that not be the case? Like, no. Nobody got off the ship and said that. If you even walked up to them and said, oh, are you a Black American? They were like, Kaki Zeiko, right? They're going to say something probably in Kimbundo or Kikongo, like, I don't know what that is, right? Oh, well, I know that they go on Black Twitter and snap selfies. Is that what they did when they got off the ship? No. Well, who won the BET or the Source Awards that year? Was it the best rapper? Who was the best rapper? Like, no, all of that is anachronistic. And all of these are as anachronistic as saying Africans, so Africans, because what you're doing is you're teleporting into the past, something that you think of now. And what I find is most people's default is anachronism, right? But you actually have to look at actual historical documentation, primary sources to understand what was going on from the minds of the people who are living at that time. And then this is the anachronistic part that absolves crackers. So, people act like the crackers were just, playing volleyball on the beach. And then someone, came up and said, hi, I'm an African. I have these Africans for sale. And then they were just saying, well, we didn't even conceive of that. But fortunately, we have some ships that are just outfitted specifically for transporting all of these people like sardines. So I guess we just lucked up. I'm glad we just happened to be sitting at the beach. But again, all of that is anachronistic. Nobody who was Black was sitting somewhere like, oh, I have some Africans for sale. Let me go and find some crackers. Oh, wow. Fortunately, they just happen to be at the shore, playing beach volleyball. So all of these things are anachronistic, but we'll show you what actually did happen, which is kidnapping. And it wasn't until much later under Correa de Souza that they found out a way that they were going to try to get Black people to enslave other Black people. And let's look at it.
Keep going, Benfo. I have my headphones on. I want to grab a book while you're talking. Keep going.
No doubt. So again, if you look at even the term Africa, I'll show you some maps from the 1500s that show you that only this little sliver was called Africa because it's a term coming from the Romans. And after they conquered Carthagos, they decided to refer to their conquered province as Provincia Africa Proconsularis, right? So again, this is a term that was not used by Black people. But even when you look at the maps are showing you that just that little thin strip of land in Tunisia, what we now know as Tunisia, was referred to as Africa. So in the 1500s, where you had, at this point in time, 1554, you had enslavement going on for over 100 years at that point. And again, there's nobody here who's like, oh, Africans are selling Africans, because just this tiny part would have been referred to as Africa. But this isn't just semantics. This is dealing with the actual issue is that you had a fragment fighting against another fragment. And for us to even get over the idea of I'm a fragment, you're a fragment, is going to get us a lot further along than where we are right now. And again, the population of self-identifying so-called Africans at this point in time was zero, right? This is what crackers are referring to these people in this little sliver as here is Africa, and then these are Africans. Everybody else is what they refer to them as. Here's Nubia, here's Mali, here's Ethiopia, here's Libya. You can tell that they, are really lacking on their cartography. But again, they're only referring to Africa and Africans. And at this time, they were using some of these terms like Libya and Ethiopia to refer to, when they did try to refer to the entire continent, they were using these terms. They weren't using the Roman term Africa until much, much later. And I talked about that previously. If you can see my slide here as well, that you find that only this tiny part here is labeled Africa, right? They're referring to this as Libya, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Egypt, so forth and so on. Again, their cartography is lacking, but they're only referring to what was the province conquered by Italy, what we now know as Italy, Rome, as Africa. So even at this point in time, And here again, we're talking about, let me come back here. Here we're talking about 1544, right? Again, over 100 years after enslavement had started, they're only referring to this teeny tiny part as quote unquote Africa. So again, this is anachronistic. The problem was, I think I'm a fragment. I think you're another fragment. I'm fighting against another fragment at the behest of the crackers, right?
Mm.
So, this is a sidebar, but even Yoruba is anachronistic. So
Wow.
I'll just go to the quote. This is 1829, which is the earliest attestation of it in the work of Clapperton, where he writes, "We learned, in fact, that we were not now in the king of Badagry's territory, but in the district of Oyo, which is called Yoruba by the Arabs and people of Hausa." And this became, a big thing because, people who are now referred to as Yoruba, they're like, "Oh, I'm proud to be Yoruba. Here's Egbe Omo Yoruba." But it wasn't even until the 1800s that this term was used, and it wasn't used by the people who are now called Yoruba. It was used by the Arabs and Hausa to say that these are shady people, these are tricky dealers, right? So now everybody's like, yeah, I'm Yoruba, Yoruba ni me, Yoruba ni, I'm so proud to be Yoruba. But anybody who's saying, oh yes, way back in the 1700s, the Yoruba, like that is anachronistic. But again, most people default to anachronism unless they've had some type of training in history or something else. So you have to even look at that, right?
So Obenfo, what did the people call themselves then? If the
They
Arabs
call
came over and
themselves
called them
all the
Yoruba,
various fragments. Yeah, they call themselves all the various fragments that we now group under the umbrella term of Yoruba. So you have some people who refer to themselves as Oyo, others who refer to themselves as Ondo. You had others who refer to themselves as Egba. You had others who refer to themselves as Omo Ibadan, like all of these different fragments. So if you even look at like a dialect map of Yoruba, then that's going to put you on
somebody's
this
calling.
idea of what it
You
was.
hear the dialing? Somebody's dialing you.
Yeah, I'm trying to stop that right this second. Are you still hearing that?
You hear
Give me
it.
1 second.
All right.
I'm gonna share and then I'm gonna shut that down.
Yeah, no, you got it. You
All right,
got it.
let me come back to the share. So yeah, they refer to themselves as fragment against fragment, and even when you read, there's a book called Yoruba Oral Tradition, and in it it talks about these various people who are now grouped under the term Yoruba and all the fights that they had amongst each other. The ones who are now grouped under the term Akan, well, let me just go straight to that. But again, this was reinforced by Bishop Samuel Ajayi Crowther on a mission to Nigeria in 1841 when he decided to take up the exonym to refer to mutually intelligible dialects. Thus began the adoption and entrenchment of Yoruba with his later publication on Yoruba grammar. Also, the term Akan is also anachronistic. So similarly, while non-Blacks Portuguese came to the area now known as Ghana back in 1471, the first use of the term Akan was in 1694, well over 200 years later, and it did not gain currency as a supposed ethnonym until the 1950s, when linguists decided to use it as an umbrella term for the language to delineate mutually intelligible dialects of the people. And again, here people refer to themselves as Asante, Ekriapim, Fanti, Gomwa, Anumabo, Abra, Agona, Achem, Aseng, Denchira, Kwewu, Akwamu, Ahafo, and many, many others. And you have the people who we now are saying, oh, these are Akan people, who are fighting amongst each other because they think they're a fragment. But guess what? When the crackers show up at the shore, do they think that they're asking them, oh, are you Asante? Are you Ekriapim? Are you Akwamu? They say, get on the ship.
That's right.
And,
That's
so
right.
it's not reasonable to anachronistically expect, it's illogical to anachronistically expect people to behave on the basis of an exonym that they did not even know existed at the time. And again, an exonym is a name used by those external to the group, right? And again, it's as anachronistic as saying, oh, the Dallas Cowboys in 1400s enslaved the Chicago Bears. You would just stop and say there were no Dallas
Exactly.
Cowboys or Chicago Bears. Well, guess what? There were also no Africans at that point in time. There were no, people, there were no Yoruba at that time. So you can't expect them to say, oh, yeah, let's all fight as Yoruba when they think I'm a fragment, I think they're a fragment. And crackers picked up on that and they decided to use that against those people.
OBENFO, hit the hide button down the bottom. It's like a bar.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Okay.
So again, African is a Latin exonym applied from without. Cultural linguistic groups are also anachronistic, saw one another as foreign and even hostile. Operational identity was local, ethnic, and political, not quote unquote African. And I had a teacher of Kikongo in Kulu Fukiao, where he said, y'all in the diaspora are more African than I am. He's coming from Congo. And he said that he has to go past a good 4, 5, 6 identities before he even identifies with Congo as a country, much less does he identify as Central African, much less does he identify as a continental African, much less does he see himself as connected to other Black people all throughout the world. And he was like, for any of us in the quote unquote diaspora we have since, we're seeing ourselves as that's our identity, like we're all African, blah, blah, blah. And, I sometimes joke that I've lived in Ghana for a good 17 years. I've probably come across as many Africans as I could count on one hand, and I'll still have at least 2 fingers left over because, people here, they think that they're Ewe, they think that they're Ga, they think that they're this, they think that they're that, and so forth and so on. Let me not get ahead of myself. But again, and then you also have the role of religion. The Berlin Conference, this is where you actually not only have a common identity, and these are crackers who are at each other's throats, but they said, you know what, the problems we have amongst each other never supersede the problems that we have against all these Black people. We're not inviting them to the table. You call yourself German, you call yourself Italian, you call yourself American.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, America was at the Berlin Conference for anyone who was wondering. Russia was also at the Berlin Conference, as was Turkey. All these crackers said, you know what? We're not only going to say that we all have something in common, we're going to operationalize that common identity. And we're going to do that to the detriment of all these quote unquote Africans. And this means that they were able to form a united front. Later on, they also had the Brussels Convention where they said they're going to do an embargo on the importation of anything but obsolete weaponry to Africans, right? So they're operationalizing a common identity. Meanwhile, we're still to this very day, like I'm a fragment, you're another fragment. That happens Ghana versus Nigeria, South Africa versus Nigeria, continental versus diasporan, FBA versus Haiti and Cuba, all this stuff. And crackers are laughing. They're like smacking their knees, laughing all the way to the bank because they say, you know what? All of y'all are enemies to me. And again, this was an email that I sent to Isaac, this guy who organized the DW street debate. And I said, plastered across the video itself is American returnees rather than naturalized Ghanaians. This gives you a different sense when you say naturalized Ghanaians, right? You
Absolutely.
got rather than a debate. Yet the whole thing is framed in an us versus them way. You chose to frame it in a type of American returnees versus the natives way, intentionally evoking Liberia, yet cutting out my explanation about what the Liberia historical context was all about. I'm really disappointed in you. You had a chance to do something different, but I guess conflict gets you guys views, right? And again, that you had a Black front person who's, serving for the whites who are actually running the agenda in order to put it together.
What about OBENFO? Did he respond to you?
He said he's sorry they changed the name from American returnees to what it is now. Has the year of return changed lives for better or for worse? But meanwhile, still inside the video itself is American returnees. So the original title said American returnees, blah, blah, blah. So they changed the title, but again, they didn't go back through to change the video, to change the lower thirds and everything else. And then the content, like I said, they edited out the part where I'm saying what Liberia was all about was De Beers, the diamond cartels, who are funding through Houphouët-Boigny in La Côte d'Ivoire. They're funding Charles Taylor. So they say rather than having to pay for the diamonds, rather than having to pay tariffs, I'll give you an AK-47, which is what, a couple $100, and in return you give me millions of dollars in diamonds. So when they talk about blood diamonds, the blood diamonds is the exact contemporary example of what got enslaved Black people back in the day. So they're doing all the exact same thing. I'm going to pit one fragment against another fragment, and I get all the benefits. They're doing that right now with blood diamonds, blood coltan, blood uranium, blood gold, blood everything else that they're doing. Right. And they're laughing all the way to the bank of one fragment thinks he's different from another fragment. And they're saying, well, all of y'all look the same to me. And this was an interesting comment. Somebody said, as African myself from Angola, why we Blacks see problem when it's one of our own people one of our people investing, growing, relocating, but we don't have a problem with the Chinese, Arab,
Come on.
Indian, etc.
Come on. Exactly.
That's a good question. That's a
Exactly.
good question. And the reason why they don't have a problem is because their consciousness is manipulated by the cesspool media that tells them what to think. So these are some of the comments that I'm replying to. It says, no one was stolen by whites. As soon as you say this, I know that you've never heard the name of Tom
Oh
Gonzalez.
yeah, oh yeah. I get Benfo. I get it all the time. When I came out with Meltrek episode 3, white folks was in my inbox. You all sold yourselves. We were on the coast. You all brought your people to us. We never went into. We just stayed on the coast. We never went inside. It would have been it would have been suicide. That's what they said. No, y'all did go in there. Y'all raided some of y'all raided some of the villages in there, and you were kidnapping folks.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you the primary text where they themselves documented how they raided, how they kidnapped, how they used pretext. They said, we're going to go in, and if you don't do this within 24 hours, we're going to go on. Like, they did this because they knew they had advanced weaponry, and they said, well, let me not jump the gun, because I'd rather just show you the
I'm with you.
They documented how they raided, how they kidnapped, how they stole.
Absolutely. And I just want to say this. My viewers know that I've always talked about this particular book, The Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1670 by Mela Nuit. And a lot of what Mela Nuit did was translate the Portuguese writings, their letters, their diary entries, all of that is in here. And they say exactly what you just said. They talk about kidnapping. They talk about raiding. They talk about burning down some of those cultural places within. They talk about all that. They say, yeah, I did it. Is it? And we have the writings. Go ahead, Benfo.
They bragged about it, as a matter of fact, because they said the fact that they're able to do this showed that God is on their side, right? Absolutely. So again, this is what they're doing. So imagine if you knew anything, you would at least hedge. You would say, well, maybe some were stolen, but they're saying no one was stolen, right? They were paid for. Like, where are these honest, truthful crackers who are saying, oh, I'm gonna do just what I said. I'll pay you in kind. Like, where are these truthful crackers who are paying and doing what they said they're going to do? Not stolen, sold. No, not forcibly stolen. Not forcibly stolen. Stolen. Wow, BS. Wow. Your own kind starts with a lie. No one was forcibly stolen. No one, right? Nobody was stolen, right? You would think they would hedge. But as soon as they say this, I know that they've never heard the name of Tom Gonzalez, who invented, I'm not going to equivocate whatsoever. He invented the very idea of what we now know as transatlantic enslavement. And again, we're not even looking at scholarly sources, later on. We're looking at the primary sources of those letters and documents.
That's right.
We were sold, not stolen, blah, blah, blah. Africans sold Africans. She says stolen. Your ancestors sold my ancestors, lady. Now the lady's coming from Kenya. This means that they have as bad cartography as crackers had back in the 1500s. And this is what I'm talking about. These are the fairy tales that keep crackers safe. So let's say all you black people are ready to go and bang on these crackers, but here comes Stinker Smell, right? With a fairy tale, waving the wand and say, y'all sold each other. Okay, well, let's go and shoot these bullets at each other, and let's leave these crackers unscathed. That's the point of the algorithms that make sure that type of narrative gains ground. Again, correction, 400 years ago, the first were sold, right? There you go. Sold, not stolen, sold, blah, blah, blah. They're confused. Yeah, you are confused because you've never read a primary text.
Right, you don't read, you don't study.
You don't read, you don't study. And here goes Stinker Smell, who says, I know you never read Chronicle, so you sold each other, so go shoot each other. Now, again, all of these fairy tales are designed to make sure that you don't whoop that cracker behind. Because if you knew that they were kidnapping and raiding, well, what you need to do, retribution, not reparations. Here again, you're going back to the same place that sold, blah, blah, blah. This is while you're going to Ghana, the empire that captured and sold. We were sold, not sold. This person didn't even know what they're saying. And again, that's Stinker Smell, who's waving the magic wand so black people go and shoot at other black people, which is exactly what got us into this problem in the first place. I think I'm a fragment. This guy thinks he's a different fragment. I shoot you, you shoot me, and the cracker remains unscathed. Most were stolen. Others were sold in. Not forcibly stolen, forcibly sold. Did not come from Ghana, blah, blah, blah. started stealing and selling Africans. And now, even this, when I talk about anachronistic, even when you get to the point of a fragment fighting another fragment, it's a good 200 years in, just about 200 years into enslavement, before they decided to come up with a method to get a fragment to fight against another fragment. Before that, they were exclusively raiding. But again, they came up with an innovation of how are we going to do this? And I'll go to the primary source for that as well. All right, again, here goes Stinker Smell, who's keeping these crackers safe. So my question, this is my research question, do the primary sources agree with YouTube commenters?
No.
The number of self-identifying Africans, 1441 to 1888, 0. The number of YouTube commenters who says sold, not stolen, who have read primary text, the exact same number, 0.
Absolutely.
How do I know you haven't read primary text? As soon as you said no was stolen, I know that you've never read Chronicle, and I'll look at the Chronicle itself. And this is really what you have going on. Baba Omoale, he gave us, the psychological breakdown of those folks, because they want to stay exactly where they are in Crackerville, just like happened back in the day.
There was two kinds of slaves. There was the house Negro and the field Negro. The house Negro, they lived in the house with masters. They dressed pretty good. They ate good because they ate his food, what he left. They lived in the attic or the basement, but still they lived near their masters. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. They would give their life to save their master's house quicker than the master would. The house Negro, if the master said, we got a good house here, the house Negro say, yeah, we got a good house here. Whenever the master said we, he said we. That's how you can tell a house Negro.
That's his house Negro.
If the master
Oh,
the house caught on fire, the house Negro would fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would. If the master got sick, the house Negro would say, what's the matter, boss? We sick. We sick. He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to the house Negro and said, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, that house Negro would look at you and say, man, you're crazy. What you mean separate?
FBA.
Where is there a better house than this?
Adolf.
Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I
FBA.
eat better food than this? That was house Negro.
Adolf.
In those days, he was called a house nigger. And that's what we call him today, because we still got some house niggers running around here. This modern house Negro loves his master. He wants to live near him. He'll pay 3 times as much as the house is worth just to live near his master. And then brag about, I'm the only Negro out here.
Back.
I'm the only one on my job. I'm the only one in this school. Nothing but a house Negro. And if
Black exceptionalism. Black tokenism.
You say the same thing that the house Negro said on the page. What you mean, separate?
Adolf.
From America? This
FBA.
white man? When you gonna get a better job than you get here? I mean, this is what you say. I ain't left nothing in Africa. That's what you say. Why you left your mind in Africa?
That was in his lecture, Message to the Grassroots. It's on Message to the Grassroots. Oh, I thought it was done. My bad, OBENFO.
No, he's about to be done.
Those were the masters. There was always more Negroes in the field than there was Negroes in the house. The Negro in the field caught hell. He ate leftovers. In the house, he ate high up on the hole. The Negro in the field didn't get nothing but what was left of the insides of the hole. They call them chitlins nowadays. In those days, they call them what they were, guts. That's what you were, a gut eater. And some of you all still gut eaters. the field Negro was beaten from morning till night. He lived in a shack, in a hut. He wore cast-off clothes. And he hated his master. I say he hated his master. He was intelligent.
That's right.
That house Negro loved his master. But that field Negro, remember, they were in the majority. And they hated his master. When the house caught on fire, he didn't try and put it out. That field Negro prayed for a wind, for a breeze. When the master got struck, the field Negro prayed that he died. If someone come to the field Negro and said, let's separate, let's run, he didn't say, where we going? He said, any place is better than here.
Thanks.
You got field Negroes in America today. I'm a field Negro.
There we go. So, this is shooting fish in a barrel, because as long as you're there in Crackerville, where can you find a better knee on your neck than this? Where can you find better I can't breathe than this?
There was two.
We continue. So this is a scholarly source, and then I'll go straight to the primary source. So in 1441, Altar Gonzalez, that's the name I've mentioned, the young captain of a small vessel dispatched by the Infant Dom Enrique of Portugal to take on a cargo of seal skins and oil, put ashore a landing party on the coast of northern Mauritania for the express purpose of capturing blacks. After light skirmishing, one black male and one black female were taken prisoner. So shortly after, he was joined by Nuno Tristão, and then they combined forces to take 10 more captives. Then after that, 240 more captives. Let's look at it. This is the idea of the birth of the idea that we now know retrospectively as transatlantic enslavement, as written in archaic Portuguese. It says, "O que fremoso aquecimiento sería, los que viemos a esta terra por levar carga de tan fraca mercadoria. Acertamos agora en nossa dita de levar os primeros cativos, the first captives, ante a presença de nosso príncipe." And it says, "Oh, how fair a thing it would be if we who have come to this land for a cargo of such petty merchandise," referring to the seal skins and oil that they were sent for, "were to meet with the good luck to bring the first captives before the face of our prince," right? And again, this is a primary text, Chronicle des Fêtes de Guinée, by Gomez Enes de Zurara, published in 1460, Paris, France, courtesy of Bibliothèque Nationale de France. And you can find this exact document, the entire document written in Portuguese. And this is Prince Henry the Navigator. This is what it actually looks like in the book, purl.pt/216. You can download this entire thing in Portuguese. And again, it's also been translated into English. So you can find that primary source for anyone who's interested. Now, how many of you think that any of those 2,000 YouTube commenters have ever read this book?
None of them. None of them.
Zero.
None
Zero.
of them.
We know zero of them have ever seen this book. They've ever read this in Portuguese or read this in English. They've never read it. And guess what? That's the exact same number who said, "I'm an African. Let me go enslave some other Africans." Zero. So again, enslavement rate. So that started in 1441. And this was, part of an article that I wrote debunking this idea of 1619, because even in 1526, you had, the Spanish who had enslaved black people in Spanish Florida at San Miguel de Guadalupe. And that was the first rebellion of enslaved black people in what would eventually become the United States of America. So again, enslavement raised by quote unquote whites in 1444. So it mentions that when recounting the life and deeds of Prince Henry, Gomez Ernest de Azurara tells the lamentable story of one of the first landings of Negro captives from West Africa on the beach at Lagos in August 1444. That's not Lagos like Nigeria, by the way. By Lancero de Freitas, division was made of the proceeds of that expedition, including 240 captives, and the latter were apportioned among the ship's captains, the Amadors, and the navigator prince himself, right? and again, it number at least several hundred every year. And for all of those, you also had those in the comments who said, "Oh, enslavement never happened." Well, guess what? You can go to those buildings that are still standing right now, where Black
Absolutely.
people were enslaved right now. You can go there in the Lisbon slave house and the African trade, right? So you can go and find those. You can go and see the shackles. You can go to the places where they sat. You can go to the places where they use their shackles to try to carve a way out of those walls. You can go and see it right now with your own eyeballs.
Now,
Right?
Obenfo, this is in Lisbon, Portugal. That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm
Exactly.
with you. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah, you can go and see it right now. The nation's first Black slave market founded at the port of Lagos in the Algarve, right? Now, again, we're going to go to Lancelot de Freitas, 1444. And again, they're telling you how they captured them and why they captured them. So let's look at that.
Obenfo, I just want to interject. Could you go back to your last slide?
Yeah, no
You
problem.
talk about the founding of the first slave port in Lagos, and you talked about how it was like over what 255 enslaved, or I like to call, I always say captives, and they
Mhm.
split them by fifths in this book. In this info, when I wrote, and this is a scholarly source on it that translated facsimiles of the original, but when I read this up info, and they detailed the story of what happened in Lagos with those 255 plus captives, they said they split them by fifths, and they said
Mhm.
people were wailing. First, they docked at night, kept them on the
Mhm.
ship all night. Morning
Mhm.
comes, they unload them from the ship. They split them
Mhm.
into fifths because they want to give Prince Henry a fifth. But they talked about how people just started wailing and
Mhm.
crying and reaching out for one another. That Legos, I just want people to understand how what took place, how horrific it was,
Right.
and what took place at this particular port. People were crying, they were reaching
Right.
out to each other, they were throwing themselves at each other. Like, it was what happened to those well, you said what happened to those black people. I don't say, you got me not want to say Africans, but what happened to those black captives? It was terrible. It was horrendous. And I just wanted to reiterate that a bit. For please continue.
Yeah, I appreciate you, bringing that in. So, here, this is also a scholarly source. We're going to the primary source, right?
Yeah.
So again, first composed 1453. This is talking about what happened just 9 years earlier, 1444, Lancelot de
Mhm.
Freitas. And we're going to start here. Viram ir nove moros y moras, right? So they saw, 9 Moors, which is what they referred to them, and more. So this is male and female. Um, con 10 o 2 asnos carregos de tartarugas, saying marching along with 10 or 12 asses laden with turtles. And then it says, and without any defense availing them in aught, they took them all. So, hacen presta defensa a quien se quisieran por prendernos todos. It said, took them all. This is where you find it right here. So, again, you can go to the primary source. Anyone who is interested in reading the primary source, you can go to this URL, very easy, purl.pt/216. And, this is a thing that, people who are also trying to escape having to do something about these crackers, they say enslavement never happened. And what they're doing is, again, they're cowards. They think that they can't defeat these crackers. So they're saying, oh, it didn't happen. And they're never explaining how did these crackers get so rich? And then how did the land of Black people become so poor? Like, you can actually look at these insurance companies that date back to the 1700s, the 1600s, and so forth, and look at their millions, look at their billions, and they're telling you directly, this is how we got rich, is by enslaving all of you
Absolutely.
quote unquote Africans.
Absolutely.
We're going to look at Christian sanity and enslavement. So we're going to look at Dom de Verses, 18 June 1452, Pope Nicholas V authorized King Alfonso I. This is this beak-looking nose cracker, and then this other beak-looking vulture nose-looking cracker. So this is Pope Nicholas V. This is Alfonso V of Portugal, to subjugate the Saracens and pagans and other unbelievers and enemies of Christ and reduce their persons into perpetual slavery. In his later bull, Romanus Pontifex, and we'll look at the primary source of this as well, 25th March 1455 is the follow-up to Dum de Verses. It refers to the savage excesses of the Saracens, the sect of the most impious Muhammad, and the seizure of the lands of Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ, and permits the enslavement of such peoples. So anybody who thinks that you are a good, Christian, well, the first thing to be a good Christian is to kill, rape, murder, enslave into perpetuity. So if you're not doing that, you're not doing as has been mandated by these papal mandates. So here you have Dum Diverses, and these are what are referred to as the papal bulls, and they would name them after the first two words of the bull written in Latin. And Dum Diverses says, although different. And this is a declaration of war, not a declaration of sale. And it says, and I quote, "We grant you full and free power through the apostolic authority by this edict to invade, conquer, fight, subjugate the Saracens and pagans." So this was the mandate to kidnap, right?
Yeah,
not to trade, not to sell, not to buy. He's saying, I am, by this edict, I am giving you full and free power to kidnap, right? And other infidels and enemies of Christ. And they took this to be very, very literal. And that's what they did. And to lead their persons in perpetual servitude. Now, this is telling you what they are doing. This is an innovation, because even the idea of perpetual enslavement across generations, that not only are you enslaved, but your children, into infinity are always going to be enslaved. Like, this is as much of an innovation as like an iPhone, right?
Absolutely.
They never seen a phone like that. This is a new idea.
He's talking perpetuity.
Perpetuity, right? This is Romanus Pontifex, and I'll show you on the next slide the actual Latin and then the translation of it. But it says, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. And then again, anyone who reads Latin, you can go and read the actual Latin, right? And again, this is Romanus Pontifex says the same thing, 1455, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. Perpetual, that means from 93 to infinity. This means forever, right? That's what it's talking about. So, anyone who is writing in those comments, I know that they've never read the Latin of Dum Diverses. How many of you think that any of them have ever read the Latin of Dum Diverses? And I'm sure many of them are, worshiping an imaginary cracker on a stick, right? Many of them consider themselves to be deeply immersed in Christian sanity, but I bet they've never read Dum Diverses. I bet they've never read Romanus Pontifex, because if they did, they would know this is where this cracker gave permission explicitly to go and kidnap Black people and to reduce them to perpetual enslavement.
Absolutely. And Obenfo, you got me over here, man, I'm over here thinking about my debate in 2014 down in Atlanta, Georgia. I was debating, and I'm not going to say his name. He's been making videos about me for the past 11 years. I beat him down with the Dum Diverses and the Romanus Pontifex. I beat him down with those sources. And I mean, to the point where Obenfo, they gave me a standing ovation, because in the name of the debate is the God of the Bible an enemy or a friend? And so you already know which side I was arguing on. And those were some of the resources that I showed. And so I'm over here right now. I'm having flashbacks right now to Benfo, but I won't say his name, but he knows who he is. He's probably watching our video right now, and probably upset. He's probably gonna make another video about me, and it's all good. But I beat him down with those sources. Please continue, Benfo, please.
So this is the thing. There are a lot more fools than there are wise people, and if that wasn't the case, we would be in a different condition as a people. So just the very fact that you have 2,000 plus people in comments who are saying no one was stolen, everybody was enslaved.
Everybody was sold.
This tells you the level of foolishness that we have, and if we didn't have that number of fools, then we wouldn't be in the condition that we're in right now. But they're fools not because they want to be fools. They're fools because the one who made them fools benefits from their foolishness.
Absolutely.
So I'll continue. So, some people say, oh, well, transporting them to Portugal doesn't count. Let's look at when they first got to the so-called New World. So as early as 1502, civilian merchant Juan de Cordoba sent his Negro slave and other agents to sell merchandise for him on the island of Hispaniola. So 1502, again, that's before 1619. 7 years later, Nana Wanda Zafra, a quote-unquote Negro slave, was commissioned by his master, so forth. So anyone who's interested, this is a scholarly source. So you see what I'm doing. I'm showing you the primary source, scholarly source, primary source,
Yeah, I'm with
scholarly
you.
source.
I'm
And
with you.
again, all of this is telling you that they are not saying, oh, let me go and nobody's saying, oh, I'm an African, let me go enslave other Africans. This is long before they came up with the innovation in order to get one fragment to fight against another fragment. Because even if you wanted to make the case of Africans, so Africans, it's like, well, when? Are you talking about the 1800s? Did what happened in the 1800s even happen in the 1700s? Did what happened in the 1700s also happen in the 1600s? What century are you even talking about?
Exactly.
Did that even happen in the 1500s? Are you talking about in the 1500s? Did that happen? Did that happen in the 1400s? They can't even give you that type of granular answer because there's, excuse me to say, their ignorance and foolishness doesn't even allow them to drill down to what period are you even talking about. Because even the part where they got to get a fragment to fight another fragment is much, much later. And they did that intentionally because they were like, it's too tiresome to keep kidnapping. Let me go and find a way under duress at the point of a gun to get a fragment to fight against another fragment. So again, 1510, King Ferdinand should have given authority for first 50 slaves to go to Hispaniola for the benefit of the mines. They had to be the best and strongest available. This is interesting that in Ghana, they have another fairy tale to keep crackers safe, that, it was only the criminals who got enslaved. But meanwhile, that's not what he's saying. He said they wanted the best and strongest available, right?
Come on.
So they're not saying, send to me you're tired, you're weary. No. They said send the best because we need to get these mines done. And they're kidnapping Black people still, again, at this point in time.
Absolutely.
So these were the ones who had gotten kidnapped first and taken to the Iberian Peninsula. And then from the Iberian Peninsula, they ended up in Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, these places. So 1526, San Miguel de Guadalupe, this is what I mentioned before. These are actual maps of Tierra de Allion. In 1526, Lucas Vasquez de Allion, and we're going to do a decade of our repatriation. We're calling it DOOR. It's a new initiative that has been endorsed by the Diaspora Affairs Office of the President, also by Ghana Tourism Development Company, where we're actually going to mark all of these years that end in 26. Not just related to the United States, but places like Cuba, Brazil, so forth, because the whole 1619 was one, incorrect. But then in terms of, they said, Jamestown to Jamestown. They didn't get taken from Jamestown. They didn't, disembark at Jamestown. They went from Luanda to Point Comfort. So, we can go into all of that, but we're actually going to have an initiative, not for tourism, not for just come here for a couple of weeks, spend money and go back. But this is how you repatriate. This is how you learn the language. This is how you, acquire land and so forth and so on. That is the decade of our repatriation. And we're going to commemorate all of these 26 years. And, this is, again, from next year is going to be 500 years since the first rebellion on what is now United States soil that was successful in driving off the Spaniards. So, again, there's several firsts associated with this colony. It was the first colony founded on current U.S. soil. The African slaves, quote unquote, that's their term, were the first imported to the continent, and their uprising was the first rebellion in North America. Successful rebellion, I would, mention. So that's how they were able to drive these Spaniards out of, the United States, and those Black people never left, right? We continue.
A quick question, Benfo, because I do want to unpack this a little bit because you got FBA who are flying a flag that says 1526, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're literally saying 1526. And it was, you made it clear in your previous slide that it was Africans down there and it was a rebellion happening. Do you know from whence they came? Were these Africans that came from lower Upper Guinea, Senegambia, Greater Senegambia? Where did these particular Africans come from who were taken over to Spanish Florida?
So again, the term African is anachronistic.
Well, yes, it's not Africa. Right.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I can look into it. The 1619, I know they definitely came from Luanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the 1526, part of it is that you had a period where the Iberian Peninsula was united under Spain, and Spain and Portugal were united as one. But yeah, I don't know where they came from. Okay. So that's a good research question. I'll look into it Are you?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, but I think that I do know. I think.
Mhm.
Family, don't quote me. I know y'all say I'm recording this. Yeah, it's got you on YouTube saying it, Dr. Mott. But in this book,
Right.
slavery and African ethnicities in the Americas, uh, Dr. Gwendolyn Hall, she talked about how when they were capturing, even I know you keep saying it's no Africans then, but people, from what the continent we now know as Africa. She said that a lot of the people who were first going into the Spanish Americas were or brought over here were actually people that were taken from Lagos. That these were
Mhm.
Latinized. I'm going to call them Latinized Africans. So these were Africans that were kidnapped. They were taken to Lagos, and then they had
Right.
already, they already they were Latinized basically. They'd already been
Right.
converted, and so they grabbed them and took them over to the Spanish Americans. But I believe that she does unpack that in this book. I believe it was this book. Please continue.
So,
Info.
so that was definitely the case for the 1502. You have the, black people who are stolen and taken to Lagos, taken to, Portugal. And those were the first ones to be transferred over to Santo Domingo, Hispaniola.
Yeah, they call them Ladinos. They call them Ladinos.
Right, exactly. So
Mm.
that one is definitely the case. So you're looking at 1502 to 1526. Again, I would look into it so I can give you the exact quote, the exact primary source as well on that.
Cool.
We can look at the scholarly source in order to see the primary source that she is dealing with, but definitely in the early 1500s, the majority of those who were transferred over to the New World were coming from, having been taken from what is now the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal.
Yes.
Right. Here's another notable 1526. This is a letter of Nzinga Mbemba, Alfonso I of Jao, Portugal. As soon as they are taken by the white men, they are immediately ironed and branded with fire. And when they are carried to be embarked, if they are caught by our guardsmen, the whites allege they have bought them, but they cannot save from home. Guess what? Because they were kidnapping.
There
This
you
is
go.
a letter. Let me give you a context. This is a letter from Alfonso I of Jao, Portugal, trying to end enslavement. So again, here's the narrative that crackers make sure proliferates on cesspool media. Africans sell Africans, but here you literally have the ruler who is trying to get them to stop enslaving black people. And I'll continue. And it says the whites allege that they have bought them, but they cannot say from whom. So that it is our duty to do justice and restore to the freemen their freedom, but it cannot be done if your subjects feel offended as they claim to be. Now, this is another text that a brother Sifu Baleka alerted me of, and I actually got a chance to converse with the author. This is Professor Nafafe, and this is a very good book, Lorenzo da Silva Mendonça and the Black Atlantic Abolitionist Movement in the 17th century. So here are black people on the continent now known as quote unquote Africa, who are actually taking their case to the Vatican to get enslavement abolished in the 17th century.
Wow.
So again, I hear everybody saying, oh, nobody was stolen, they were sold. But here you have a quote unquote continental African taking his case to the Vatican in order to abolish enslavement altogether. Where are all these coons, buffoons, and Looney Tunes with this? Have they ever read this book?
No.
No, they haven't, nor have they read the primary sources that are linked to them. So again, the High Court of Appeal testimonies against Correa de Souza, 1623 to 1624, from Father Mateus Cordosa, Antonio Bezerra Fajardo, and others. So it says the vassals of Kazanze were in our allegiance. They're talking about Kazanze. So they were in our allegiance, in our settlement. Then the governor, that's Correa de Souza, brought in a resolution of his own, which he took by himself, and he hired 5 ships and filled them with those miserable people against their will, kidnapped, right? And every single person who was taken into enslavement was kidnapped. Now you're going to go into, were they kidnapped by the crackers, or were they kidnapped by somebody else who thought that they were from a different fragment? But nobody went willingly. That means every single person was kidnapped. But again, this is the reason why people say sold, because it makes it sound like, you're trading baseball cards or whatever you're doing, right? Who came to show their allegiance. He sent them to Brazil, and paying the cost of shipment and food packages to the ship's masters, left their land depopulated without a sign of people. So if this was a trade, if this was a sale, how can you get a sale where not a single person is left, from the ruler all the way down to the one who tends the pigs? Every
Exactly.
single last person was kidnapped against their will. And this is the testimony in the Vatican. Continue, testimony of Father Mateos Cardosa, 1622. It seems to all people that the resolution was unjust. Bearing in mind these sobas came of their free will to pledge their allegiance. Some of them came to speak to the counselor and other priests who tried to dissuade the governor from his decisions. For it appears that it was just that the poor sobas, that's the rulers, words were kept. In particular, it was not fair to ship them and make landless Sobaquiso and the other 2 or 3 who have pledged their love for us. So guess what? All of you who are FBA ADOS, you're pledging your love to Trump and these crackers in the United States. But guess what's going to happen to you? The exact same thing that happened to Sobaquiso, who pledged his love to these crackers, the Portuguese. Them having served in our army, doesn't that sound like the House Negroes? Helped build our fort, doesn't that sound like the House Negroes? We built this country, right? And one of them having fish for our soldiers. We built this land, right? But guess what happens to those of you who built that land? I can't breathe. Mama with the knee on the neck. That's what happens to you. Keep pledging your love. Again, reports of priests in Luanda about João Correa de Souza kidnapping Christian subjects. So again, this is from Nafafe. And I'm just pulling out the primary sources that are cited in the
I'm
book.
with you. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you.
So the governor, João Correa de Souza, before the judge of the high court left Angola, marched into a war not only against heathens, but also against Christians. So all of y'all who thought that you're praying to an imaginary crack on a stick that's going to save you, no, it's not. If the same cracker who is enslaving you looks exactly like the crack on a stick you're praying to, guess what? That cracker is not going to save you anymore. Who are vassals of the King of Congo, brothers in arms to your majesty, that has a seat and a court of bishops. And in that kingdom come and go Portuguese who trade as in this land of our King and Lord. There are more than 1,000 Portuguese trading their goods, from which trade comes thousands of cruzados to the royal treasury. These were not good enough reasons for João de Souza to wage war on a Christian kingdom in the month of May 1622. So these are people who had already pledged their love to the crackers. They already converted to Christian sanity. But guess what? Those are the ones who said, you know what? That's easy pickings. We're going to kidnap each and every last one of them and leave their land depopulated without any sign of people. Where's the sale? Right? Where's the fair and square handshake? Yeah, crackers are going to, honor their word. Where are these imaginary crackers who because I don't know any of these crackers who are about to win a truth-telling contest. As Nana Kwame Ture said, the only time that they ever tell the truth is as a result of a double lie.
And you know what? This slide made me think of Philip Kwaku. He was I'm going to call him a minister or a pastor. He's buried in Cape Coast. And he was over there converting, our ancestors, right? Our brothers and sisters to Christianity. And you see OBENFO where he's buried, right? They didn't even bury him with the white folks. They said they segregated him in death. So like you said, it didn't matter whether they didn't care whether you was a Christian or you were converted to Christianity. Please continue, OBENFO.
Which is a very good point, right? So yeah, let's continue. But that is in the dungeon in Ogwa, what they now refer to as Cape Coast. So anybody who wants to see it, all of these people who say, "Oh, we've always been in the United States," enslavement never happened. This tells you that they've never traveled, even, right?
Never been away. I tell them all the time: get a passport and travel. Get off of YouTube and TikTok and X and get a passport and go travel. Go to Senegal. Go over to Ghana. Go over there and look for yourselves.
They have to concoct a lot, and you could ask them, okay, what year was the dungeon built? If it didn't date to that, what year was the dungeon built, right? But we'll leave the fools for their foolishness. But again, this is a point I want to drive home. The reason why they are fools is not because they want to be fools. It's because them being fools protects the crackers who would get their butts whooped if they weren't fools. Because once you know this is what the crackers did, then you got to say, well, guess what? We got to do something about these crackers. But because they feel like that is a hopeless, effort, that's why they concoct all of this, imaginary crap that they come up with, because they don't want to face this cracker and, deal with, well, guess what? It's not about reparations, it's about retribution. And, that would change their whole life trajectory. And they don't want their life trajectory to change. They want to keep being the house Negro, cooning, buffooning, and Looney Tuner. So again, this is how you even got to where you got one fragment, a quote unquote tribe, to fight against another fragment and enslave another fragment by kidnapping. And this was the invention in 1626 of Fernão de Souza, using baculamento, which was a tribute as coercion to enslave or be enslaved. So again, 1626, Fernão de Souza, the Portuguese governor of Angola, forced, not traded, not bargained,
Right.
not negotiated,
Sold. No
forced,
sold. Traded.
not
Sold.
sold,
Right.
forced local Sobas rulers to pay an annual tribute of 100 enslaved people instead of paying taxes and goods. Before this invention, so we looked at Antal Gonzalez, that was his invention of everything that we now know retrospectively as transatlantic enslavement. Now, anybody who wants to talk about African soul Africans, which is again anachronistic, they need to know the name Fernão de Souza, because he invented the means by which you got one black person to fight against another black person and kidnap another black person, because before that, they were kidnapping. But now they said, well, guess what? Now we don't have to work as hard. We're going to force them to pay an annual tribute of 100 enslaved people. And we'll look at the actual words, word by word, of the edict that he declared in order to make that happen. So again, if somebody even wants to deal with this anachronistic thing of African soul Africans, I would ask them, did that happen in 1625? They wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. They wouldn't even know what happened in 1626. So again, instead of paying taxes and goods like cattle or palm oil, which is what they did prior to that. So if they fail to deliver the required number, doesn't that sound like Belgian Congo, right? And again, when they talk about colonization, that is enslavement on the continent.
Fact.
And then transatlantic enslavement is enslavement off the continent, because again, 10 million black people in Congo, if you fail to deliver the quota, they're cutting off your hand, they're cutting off your breast, they're going to use your breast as a purse, a pocketbook, right? In Belgium. Look at these, Neanderthals. Look at these cave beasts. Look at these savages, right? These crackers. So if they fail to deliver the required number, they face severe punishments, including being enslaved themselves or deposed. And it should say, and deposed. So let's look at the quote, right? So Sousa was the first Portuguese governor in Angola to introduce a system of taxation on the sobas that transformed baculamento from tax and produce in combos. So again, before this, you paid tribute in produce, right? And he's going to mention what was used to tax and enslave people. This is an innovation like an electric car, right? This is an innovation like electricity. Before this was inconceivable. How are you going to get one black person to enslave another black person? To now, this is how he's going to do. So outlining his new tax, Sousa declared, and I quote, all tribute of encombos should be abated that are of goats and cows, because there are not any. Those of dugout canoes, for which there is lack of timber, of oleo, referring to palm oil, because of those sobas who do not have palm trees on their lands to make it, and of chickens, because of long traveling, they bring them dead. That an edict of quality in enslaved be decreed. This is his invention in 1626, because all types of slave are called pesa, and with such decrees, they will be relieved from paying tribute that they are obliged to, because they say they do not understand that it was forever. Now he's getting this straight from the Pope, right? He's getting this straight out of Christian Sanity. What he said, perpetual enslavement. That's Pope Nicholas, right? The fifth.
Did you say Christian Sanity?
Yeah, I always like to call things by their proper name. So yes, Christian Sanity, Isfet Islam. I always like to call things by their proper name.
Oh, okay. I was just
right. That it was forever. Subsequently, it be decreed to them in clear terms for which they are obliged to. They will continue to pay, and to all their successors, as it is in the book where they are written from my instruction, that I will be handing over to the one your majesty has appointed. So again, this is the first time that you have this idea of how you're going to get black people to enslave other black people, not by trade, not by fair payment, not by negotiation for a sale, but if you don't bring me tribute, you used to do tribute in timber, goats, cows, palm oil, but now you have to pay taxes on threat of death at the point of a gun in other black people. So you better go and enslave them before they enslave you. And look at this. This isn't just for one fragment. He's saying this to this fragment that calls itself whatever, Mundu. He's saying that to this fragment that calls itself Congo, he's saying that to each and every fragment that you have to bring me a tribute in 100 enslaved Black people. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that means he knows that he's pitting one against the other because you have to bring me all of them, and all of them have to do it.
Mm.
So again, Correa de Souza demanded that Nabangongo, so this is the enslavement of Duke Paulo Afonso, Nabangongo, and Dom Cosme. These are rulers, right? So everybody has this imaginary, mythical idea of a corrupt ruler who's like, oh,
Yep.
I want to go enslave my people, right?
Yep.
Here's my child. Let me go enslave him because I want, rum and mirrors, right? But here's how he enslaved the rulers themselves. So Correa de Souza demanded that Nabangongo return 2,030 alleged runaway enslaved and send him 50 to 100 further enslaved people as compensation, without giving Nabangongo adequate time to comply with his wishes, which he knew he couldn't do. Correa de Souza sent troops to Bumbi and many prisoners of war, not prisoners of trade, not prisoners of sale, not prisoners of negotiation, prisoners of war were taken, including
Come on.
Nabangongo, Cosme, and other Sobas. Sobas is the word for rulers. They were brought to Luanda, sold as enslaved people, and then shipped to the Spanish Indies, Brazil, and Sao Tome. Right? So again, this is where you got this idea of how you're going to enslave other people, that initially he said, I'm going to give you terms that I know you can't comply with. And because I have cannons and guns, once you don't comply, you're getting enslaved. So this is kidnapping raids. And then in 1626, he came up with an edict that says every year you have to bring me tribute and enslave people. And he's saying it to each and every fragment, and that's how he's able to pit one fragment against another fragment. So I think you can understand how saying Africans sold Africans doesn't capture any of what we're talking about.
No, it doesn't.
If you actually want to be accurate, you can say a fragment enslaved another fragment, a quote unquote tribe enslaved another tribe. But how did you even get to that point?
To that point, exactly.
You got to that point through this innovation, because again, they're first landing at Cape Verde, the actual Cape itself. That's where you have the first Black male and first Black female kidnapped. And then they, continued down the coast. Eventually they got to what we now know as Elmina, which was originally called Anomansa, the place where you drink that water never finished, referring to the river there. And then, they worked their way to Lagos. They worked their way. So by the time you're starting off in 1444, by the time you get to 1622, 1626, they're perfecting their craft.
Absolutely.
How do we make it less? Because crackers are lazy. If they weren't lazy, they wouldn't need to enslave people to do work for them for free for 500 some odd years, right? So because they're lazy, they're trying to find a way. Kidnapping is difficult work. So how can we get a Black person to enslave another Black person? Guess what? The same way you have to pay tribute, and you've had to pay tribute in goats and cows. Well, guess what? From here on out, you got to do it in other enslaved Black people, and each and every Black has to do it.
Yeah, let me chime in real quick. You mentioned Cape Verde, and and if you go back to your previous slide, you got Brazil and you got Sao Tome in there. I just really want people to understand what these places were. Cape Verde, Sao Tome, a lot of these places, they set up sugar plantations over there. They were cultivating sugar there, and they were also using these places as transshipment areas too. So they would bring you in and then ship you all over the place. And matter of fact, Sao Tome was actually like the Portuguese, I'm going to say, their first hub for cultivating sugar. And then from there, it went to Brazil. Brazil then became their major hub. But I just wanted to kind of back you up on that, OBENFO. Please continue.
No doubt. And this is a thing, like anybody who says that they're FBA or ADOS, it means they don't know anything. That the majority of the people were shipped first into the Caribbean, but and quote unquote broke in there before they were, shipped onwards to the United States of a murderer. Even the ones in 1619, they were actually headed for New Spain, right? Veracruz in New Spain, but they got pirated by some crackers under another flag, and that's how they ended up there in 1619. But this is the thing. Tell me anybody in FBA or ADOS who can tell me with proof that they didn't start off in Jamaica first.
Come on.
Or that
or Barbados. Or Barbados.
Or Barbados first, right? Which one can you tell me through your documented proof that you came straight from the continent, or some people just making up imaginary things? We always been here. which one of them can tell me that you didn't go to any plantation on the Caribbean before you were shipped onwards to the United States of America? Because again, anybody who knows a bit of geography knows that you'll land in the Caribbean before you would land in the United States of America.
Yeah,
We
it was
continue.
rare. No, it was rare, Benfo, and I'm glad that you brought that up. It was very rare that they went, like you said, directly from the 13 colonies to Africa. Like, it was very rare. And I'm looking right here. I'm looking at one of my books because you got me going. In the Caribbean, there were like 5 main transshipment areas. You had Jamaica, you had Martinique, you had Saint
Right.
Dominique, and you also had Guadalupe.
Yeah.
So those were the
Right.
major transshipment areas in the U.S. And they even tell you that in Jamaica, they imported a lot of Africans from what we call today Ghana. They called it the Gold Coast. That's what they called it.
Right.
And they called it the Pepper Coast, Slave Coast, Ivory Coast, and all of that other stuff. And out of ignorance of Benfo, I remember repeating that stuff in Meltrek episode 1, the Gold Coast, the Pepper Coast. And then as I grew in knowledge, I realized that they didn't know where the hell they were. So they were naming these coasts based on what they were getting. So they'll say the
Right.
Slave Coast because they were getting,
Right.
after they were getting captives over there. Or they'll say the Ivory Coast because that's where they were going.
Right.
And I didn't realize that at that particular time when I created Meltrek episode 1. So I got to go back and I'm due for a update. But anyway, go ahead, Benfo. Please continue.
All right, no doubt. Yeah, so I think those are very good points that you're bringing up. That again, when you are bringing them in, you want to break them on these different plantations. And then again, just as you said, transshipment. And this is what we're going to look at as well, because we mentioned Bermuda. Let's look at this. So we asked the question, kidnapped or sold? So when the 30 Years' War broke out in 1618, the English, though not formally involved in the war, subsidized Protestant forces against the Catholics and unofficially renewed the naval war against Spain. These are your honest crackers, right? They have a truce, but they're finding a way to break the truce. But these are the ones who you're telling me, hey, I'm going to strike you a square deal. All right, give me the payment, right? So soon the English privateers joined with Dutch counterparts in attacking Spanish and Portuguese vessels. They even backstabbing each other as crackers. The Somers Island project, linked commercially and institutionally with Virginia, was in the forefront of privateering. Somers Island subsequently broke from the Virginia Company and was renamed Bermuda. Already in 1614, the Spanish were complaining that English pirates from Bermuda had raided their coastline. In 1615, a privateer brought the first known quote-unquote African to Bermuda, taken from South America. A year later, English ships captured a slave ship on the coast of Honduras. I continue. It was in this context that 2 English privateers set out in 1619. Wasn't that the 400 years? People try to be Hebrew Israelis and all type of other stuff, just ridiculousness. It was in this context that 2 English privateers set out in 1619 to attack Spanish shipping. Because of the formal truce between Britain and Spain, they did not get their letters of marque license to capture enemy shipping from England. One privateer, John Job, the captain of the White Line, got his from Dutch Prince William of Orange. The other, Daniel Elfrith, captain of the Treasurer, received him from the Duke of Savoy in northern Italy. They might have taken any ship that flew the Spanish flag or Portuguese, because, as well, I mentioned, the 2 countries were united at that time under the Spanish king. But the privateers captured a Portuguese slave ship, the São João Batista, captained by Manuel Menendez de Cunha, departing the port of Luanda in Angola on its way to Veracruz in Mexico. The ship transported 350 enslaved Black people. In its initial cargo, São João Batista had a difficult voyage with mortality so high that it had to stop in Jamaica and discharge some of its cargo before continuing. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? But the 2 privateers got to the vessel before it reached the destination in Veracruz, waylaying it off the Campeche in the Yucatan. So again, they're even kidnapping on the high seas, right? They're not doing a trade. They're not selling. They're not buying as much. Have you ever found a cracker who's like, I can steal something or I can pay a fair price for it? What do you think this cracker is going to do? Again, waylaying it off the Campeche in the Yucatan. They could not take all the slaves off the ship, so they split the cargo and took around 30 of the captives each, most likely the healthiest, and then headed north for Virginia. So that's your 1619 that we're building up to. And this is my award-winning article, 400 Years, Ancestors Disappear, Historical Misorientation and Disorientation in the Year of Return, and the 400 Years Narrative.
I'm grabbing that, Benfo. I'm grabbing that. I got to read that, add that to my arsenal.
Definitely. So basically, it's dealing with any time you deal with this 1619 as the beginning of enslavement, you're erasing a good 500,000 Black people who had been enslaved prior to that.
Absolutely.
And this is my question: African, so 1789. Little Ephraim Robin John and Ancona Robin John. And this is for anybody who thinks that crackers are truth telling. They're going to drive a fair bargain. They're going to pay you in kind or whatever they're going to do. And we're going to look at these fragments fighting against another fragment, how crackers were able to play both of them against each other in order to enslave everybody. So members of the ethnic elite in Old Calabar, they were engaged in the slave trade, quote unquote, that's what they call it. In 1767, during a conflict between rival factions, fragment versus fragment, which is what it really was, they were kidnapped by British slave traders and sold into slavery in the Americas. Their experiences are chronicled in various historical records. And again, we're going to turn from scholarly source to primary source. So this is the actual legal deposition that was given, the affidavit that was given. Mm-hmm. So the masters of some of the English vessels lying in the river sent letters to our brother, Grandee Ephraim Robin John, to be shown all of the principal traders of Old Town. So when you even look at the name, you could tell this is somebody who's already been crackified, right? These letters invited the said principal traders on board the English vessels, promising that they would endeavor to make up the quarrel and in the meantime protect the people of Old Town. We, Little Ephraim and Ancona Robin John, delivered a letter from our brother to Captain Bevan, who invited us into the cabin of his ship. He gave us some liquor to drink and told us he would soon return. You can see where this is going, right?
I see where it's going.
Then left the cabin and shortly after returned with 2 pistols. That's trade, right? That's how crackers do their trade. That's how they do their buying and sales, right? Returned with 2 pistols in his belt and a cutlass in his hand and with a frown on his face. Now remember the Jutu commenters, no one was stolen. They were sold. No one. Let's look. And with a frown on his face, he threatened us with death if we made any resistance. And at that moment, his crew seized us and put us in irons. The crews of the English ships fired upon the canoes of Old Town, killing several of our countrymen and scattering the rest. Those who came aboard relying on the promises of the captains were forcibly carried away and sold into slavery. We ourselves were sold in Dominica. That means anybody in Dominica can't stay in Dominica because you can't be in anywhere where sales happen, right? And some of our brethren were sold in other parts of the West Indies and the Americas.
Benfo, is Saint Dominique and Dominica the same place or no?
So you have Dominica as a current term, but then you have Saint Domingue. So you had different terms. And when you talk about Saint Dominique, I'm not sure if whatever the source you're referring to would be referring to Dominica. So I would want to look that up as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
But you had again even different terms that were used at different points in time.
Exactly.
Where you referring to the exact same place, but depending on who was in charge at the time, they're going to change it.
Exactly. I read and Dr. Gwendolyn Hall made that point. She was saying that Guinea meant different places. It depends on the period that you're talking about. Exactly. Guinea might have been this area. It might have been this area. It just depends on who was writing it and what period. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. So I would want to know the exact time period that's being referred to, and then I will be able to tell you the specific place, and then also which specific crackers are referring to that place.
Exactly. Benfo, check the private chat really quickly. Check the private before you continue.
Let me pause on my screen share then.
Okay. The private chat on the side.
Oh, so I actually have, where am I now? I'm at slide 52. I have another 100 slides. So let me do this. Let me do this. So I've actually given this presentation on a couple of occasions in full, where it's about 3 hours. So that's a marathon. And I know what, you've been dealing with other stuff today.
Yes.
For anybody who's interested, you can put the link in the chat. It's abibitumi.com/fairytales was the first time. Because again, we're talking about fairy tales to keep crackers safe. And that's what Africans is really all about. If they talk about it's about reparations, no, it's about keeping crackers safe. If they say it's about having a lineage, no, it's about keeping crackers safe. And that's the reason why crackers make sure that you keep that narrative going, is because they know as long as you say that narrative, or you say a narrative, enslavement never happened, well, guess what? That means you don't have to go Nat Turner on a cracker.
That part. Right? That part. And this is what he's talking about. This is what he's talking about, family. And I'll make sure that this link is in the description underneath this video. You said the bbtome.com was that /fairy tale. And so this is what he's talking about. Look, OBENFO, and I'm sitting over here thinking about how, shoot, you offering this for $20. This is, you talking about 3 hours. This should be a few hundred. Come on, this is a class. This is a semester. Shoot, this should be worth thousands of dollars right here, OBENFO. I mean, I'm just thinking about right now, this is literally a college course, you know, with all of the information that you're packing into these 3 hours. This is priceless. I don't even want to put a price tag on it. I say hundreds and I say thousands. I don't even want to put a price tag on it. But family, this is what he's talking about. And OBENFO, I just want to show, because so often we as parents, you know, we want to get the information. We're, you know, seeking the truth and learning. But I think that it's imperative that our children learn with us, right? Like, we got to be teaching our children this information. And so I do want to show the trailer for Meltrek episode 3, Exploring the Ma'afa. And man, you talked about the term Ma'afa. Exploring the Ma'afa part 1, the arrival of the Portuguese. Check it out, family. Oh man, hold on.
It's muted.
Yeah. Let's do it like this.
There are many films about slavery told through foreign lenses. Now witness the full story from an African perspective. How did slavery in Africa begin? Who were the major players? Who resisted? Learn the answers and much more in Meltrek, Exploring the Ma'afa, Part 1, The Arrival of the Portuguese.
And I just want to show you all, that's the trailer. You can go to Meltrek365.com. That's Meltrek365.com to get your copy. And so OBENFO, he talked a lot about the Portuguese today, and we talk about the Portuguese a lot. Of course, we're talking about, you know, the arrival of the Portuguese in here. So we focus on the Portuguese a lot. So some of those names, some of those key figures that OBENFO stated, we talk about them in this film. Check out a little clip.
Gloomy days were ahead of us. We had no idea what we were in store for. Follow me, children. Embrace yourselves as I take you on this harsh journey. 1440 when the Portuguese came from overseas on ship Navio. Yeah, 12 Africans and took them up to Prince Henry. That's where they were proudly sold. Then in 1444, Prince Henry sent 6 ships right back again down to Lagos, and the idea was for them to capture more Africans, and they surely did. Find all their targets. The way they did it, it was cold and heartless. So 235 Africans, and Lagos became a trademark. And it was so much darkness, rude behavior. They traveled further south for human labor, stole many more Africans for free work, and they never had to pay them. It was so outrageous. They found new places, Cape Verde's island, Use the Africans they kidnapped for free labor on the sugar plantations. And that wasn't the only problem. No, that wasn't the only problem. In 1482, they built a fortress called El Mina right there in Ghana. Initially, it was supposed to be to have access to all commodities, but eventually became a trade port and the headquarters for the Portuguese. The slaves were forced into El Mina like animals. That's where they were stationed. Kept in
I don't even want to give it away. I don't want to give it away. Family. Make where did that go? Where did we go? There we go. Family, make sure that you head to meltrek365.com. Benfo, I gotta say this. You and I, we aligned even when we don't communicate. You and I are in perfect alignment because we just talked about, oh yeah, you coming on, we're gonna get together, we're gonna talk about this. But you had no idea I was gonna bring up the discussion on the video I saw. And you actually had slides in there addressing the comments under the video that I brought, my friend saw this video of you, da 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 da. And I mean, it was just like it was perfect. And that's why I say, man, I agree wholeheartedly with Tony Browder that nothing happens by chance in the universe ruled by divine law and order. And so I just really appreciate this alignment. It's like I said, this wasn't planned, and I'm listening to you and you're addressing things. I'm like, golly, goodness gracious, this brother is in my head. But anyway, I do want to, before we head on out of here, I do want you to talk about your initiatives. I do know the BB2Me conference is coming up. This is the third conference and festival. And so talk about it. Talk to us about it, Benfo, for a little bit before we close out.
All right, Black Salute. So this is as you mentioned, the third of BB2Me conference on Black Power. And this is part of a larger initiative now that we're referring to as the decade of our repatriation. So a lot of people, are familiar with the year of return and so forth. And, I did a video some years back with a YouTuber called Wood Amaya, and he decided to title it Year of Return as a Fraud. That wasn't my point. My point was that the idea of 1619 as a start date for enslavement is inaccurate. So I just focused on various cases of rebellions and revolutions by Black people that occurred prior to 1619 and how the memory of all those ancestors is wiped away. And that was I mentioned before, the award-winning article, because I was just off the top of my head, like I already knew all this information. But yeah, I decided to write an article, and that won the Provost Publications Award for best publication in the humanities. But again, we had this conversation, and basically I was like, I don't want this to become a thing of, just come for tourism, now go back, spend your money, and then go back. Now what are you going back to? Right. You're going back to the same plantation. You're going back to, Oscar Grant. You're going back to Michael Brown. You're going back to Amadou Diallo. Now, all the
Sandra Bland.
The crackers are not saying, are you a continental African or a diasporan African? They're saying, all of y'all look like, ready to be killed to me, right? So they're not asking for Amadou Diallo's passport before they shoot him down. So, once you know that you have common enemies, it behooves you to unite on the basis of what you have in common against those common enemies. And we've been most successful when we've done so, right? And yeah, so I'll pause on that. But yeah, so the conference is coming up. We've had, my father, Nana Abibi Fahundia, we actually did a statue unveiling for him at the last conference. We've had OBENFO Anthony Browder, OBENFO by Nabello, just so many luminaries who've spoken there and performed there. Just, it's been a Blacktastic experience. This year is set to be bigger than all of them. And this is part of an initiative that's been endorsed by the presidency where, if I had a problem with just come for tourism, now go back, this means that I'd actually need to be part of that solution of how can you actually come here and learn the language? How can you come here and get citizenship? And that's part of the second initiative, that's repatriatetogana.com. I see that tab is already open. And this is, let's say you come for the conference. The conference is also part of the Sankofa journey. I'll put the link in there as well. But yeah, that's essentially what it is to assist people, not just to come here to tour, to see something for a week or two. And this is the thing, like a lot of the people who are in the quote unquote conscious community, the best you can get from them is, let me say, conscious tourism, right? I'll go for a week or two, and then I'm, back off to pay my mortgage to a cracker, pay my car up to a cracker, build the land of cave beasts up, Meanwhile, every single cent that we spend in the land of Crackerville is financing the bombs that they're dropping here in the land of Black people, is financing the AK-47s and the AR-15s that's shooting Black people down throughout the world. So, that's something that I would always advocate. So many of our ancestors have said, until this land that they now misnamed, quote unquote, Africa as a world power, no Black person will be respected anywhere on the face of the entire planet Earth. So once you know that, it behooves us to make this place a world power by making it once again, Abibiman, the land of Black people, Kemet, the land of Black people, and Yoruba, Ile Adulawo, the land of Black people, Farafina, and Bambara, the land of Black people, because it's not enough for us to even know that we can conceptualize it that way. What we have to do is actually operationalize that. Like at the Berlin Conference, they operationalized, we're all crackers, we got common enemies. We need to operationalize, not that we're quote unquote Africans, which doesn't mean anything, but we're all, before that's in Chi to say Black people. Again, beyond just a term, we actually have to make that stick of, if this is a land of Black people, what are these crackers doing taking our gold? If this is a land of Black people, what are those crackers doing taking our coltan? If this is a land of Black people, or if at that time we knew that this is a land of Black people, what are you doing taking Black people from here? So this is a decade of our repatriation. This is a site. We're actually building it out. We're going to put a directory on it, an event, calendar on it as well. And basically we're going from the idea of parties to projects, right? We're doing projects here in the land of Black people. We're going from, parties to providers, those who are providing services. And these are images of those who are helped to get citizenship, right? These are images of those who are doing the work, those who are assisting others, just as Nana Harriet Tubman assisted people to get out of Crackerville. Well, we're also assisting people to get out of Crackerville in a similar type of way. So this is the most recent, 524, and these are our Repatriate to Ghana clients who assisted in coming back home to the land of Black people so that they are no longer building up the land of our cracker enemies. Because again, we saw what happened when we build up the land of cracker enemies. All they do is turn around and enslave you the exact same way. We saw what happened when you convert to Christianity. That means that you're the low-hanging fruit that they can now, whoop that cracker behind, or prevent us from whooping that cracker behind, which is what we actually need to do, not about reparations, but about retribution. I also want to show this one. We're doing the Sankofar journey. This is the 24th year of it. So I'll share my tab on it as well. So our 27th year, actually, the first time that it happened was in 1998. And that's how I first came to Ghana with my mother. She is doing it once again together with me. And we are going to make this not just Ghana, but Ghana and Burkina Faso. So anyone who is interested, I'm actually going there next month to set things up for going to Burkina Faso. So anybody who is interested, you can come to the Sankofar journey. Other people, have actually stolen that name. You'll see something on Cracker Book.
I remember you. Yeah, I remember you said you shared that today.
Yeah, so don't be fooled by anybody who's trying to steal the name and call their knockoff thing the Sankofar journey. You don't want a Temu Sankofar journey. You don't want an Alibaba Sankofar journey. You want the real deal. These are some folks actually out of Baltimore. Baba Imhotep Fatu brought PLM here to Ghana, and that was a black tax at time that they had there. So you may recognize some of the folks from Baltimore there. That's when my whole family got citizenship here. So, if this is your dream, then we are making that the reality. And the same way you have folks on the plantation who didn't want to leave, we got the physical plantation and the digital plantation. And let me actually show you this.
But let me ask you this. So I see the dates for that. All this is going on during the BB Toomey conference. Sankofa Journey is happening during that.
So the conference is part of the Sankofar Journey. I'm gonna let Nana Harriet Tubman hit you with something before I close up. But the Sankofar Journey is from December 9th through the 23rd, and the conference is part of that. And the conference is happening from the 12th through the 14th of December. So you fly in, you experience the conference and the festival, and then from there we go to Burkina Faso, and then we come back.
When do you go to Burkina Faso? Which date is that?
So what I'm actually setting it up now, we're looking to, after the conference that ends on the 14th, we're looking at getting to Burkina Faso by the 15th or 16th, and then returning by the 22nd. So
Okay, and
that's,
what and you'll be down there learning and seeing things, exploring, and all of that type of all that good
yeah,
stuff.
what we're actually doing. Well, I won't tell you everything that we're doing because I'm
Yeah.
actually setting up the infrastructure of it right now.
Mm.
But what I would like for us to do is to invest in Burkina Faso. A lot of people, they love President Ibrahim Traore, but I want people to put their money where their liberation is, and that's
Okay,
what it's
okay.
all about.
That's what it's about.
Let me
Okay.
play this real quick. This is
Never
BBC.
remained on the plantation, digital or physical. When it comes to freedom, I don't play around with it. So, would you tell me why you ain't leave sucker book and get yourself free on BB to me? Would you tell me that?
Right.
Ashe.
So as mentioned, the theme for the Abibi to Me conference, when you come here, the theme for the Abibi to Me conference is what Black Power is. So some people were asking the question, well, what is Black Power? Well, no, this conference is about what Black Power is, demonstration over conversation. Be about what you say that you're about. And that's what it is all about. We have the Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi Film Festival, which is happening November 28th through the 30th. The conference, we're going to actually do 2 weekends. One is going to be the virtual only weekend, the 5th to the 7th, and then the actual on the ground weekend, which is actually hybrid because it has an online component, the 12th to the 14th.
Okay.
So for anybody who is interested, whether you can get here or not, you can at least participate in the virtual aspect of it. But we always want people to come on the ground, especially those who say they're about Black liberation and nation building and everything else. But the best they could do is, just stay in Crackerville and say we built it up. That's not enough. Repatriate the Ghana, you already showed that, endorsed by Diaspora Affairs Office of the President. That's the Decade of Our Repatriation Initiative. For anyone who's interested, again, we're still working on the site, building it out to the directory and the events, but Decade of Our Repatriation. This is the full presentation, as you mentioned, Africans in the slavery and other fairy tales that keep quote unquote white people safe. And yeah, this is, like you said, a college course. It could be a college course. I did it part 1. I did part 2, and I actually had somebody who was a YouTuber who said, "Oh, you shouldn't be scholarly, just do hot takes and opinions and blah blah blah," because they only care about monetizing. So if I just say something off the wall, then it's going to get more views. But no, people actually need to know what the primary sources are.
Absolutely.
Because this actually came up. Somebody was saying,
that's important, OBENFO. I said that's important, OBENFO. You got to know the primaries, and even scholarly sources. That's important.
So I had a brother of mine who said Jamaica comes from the phrase in Chi, where it said Jamayaka, which is to say perhaps we've gotten stuck, right? And I was like, let's look at the primary sources. The first Black people got taken to Jamaica in 1513, but you can find maps from 1511 that have it listed as Yamaka, which tells you it's going to come from Chi because there were no Chi-speaking people to call it that. So again, we can't just have hot takes where it sounds cool or whatever. We actually have to go to the primary sources.
Yeah, back it up. Source up.
So again, Sanko for a journey. And yeah, anybody, I would invite you as well, Dr. Mahat, to join BB2MeTV.com.
Absolutely, man. It's in the works.
On behalf of the content creator, you get 90%, and then BB2Me gets 10. That's better than any cracker on the plantation can do. So yeah, definitely check it out. That's what we are about. Demonstration over conversation. And I definitely want everybody to participate in the Decade of Our Repatriation. We have the film festival. Like I said, we have the virtual conference. We have the on-the-ground conference. We have, the performers in terms of the music. So it's 365, 360 degrees, 365 days of Black Power, what Black Power is. And, that's what it's all about. I get sick of people who say they're about Black liberation, but you can only find them on cracker plantations.
Sure.
I'm like, if we are willing to pour libation to our ancestors, we have to ask a question of, how am I like that ancestor? If our ancestors got off the plantation, we have to look at ourselves and say, in what way have I gotten off a modern day plantation? If our ancestors were, coupe tete brûlé kai, in what way have I done coupe tete brûlé kai, cut head, burn house, for anybody who doesn't know? How have I done that in my life? And then we can ensure that we ourselves will become ancestors, as opposed to standing over their bodies and say, what a good job you did. What we're supposed to do is pick up the weapon and continue the fight. And that's what it's all about.
Ashe. So I dream one day, and I think I shared this with you when I was in Ghana. One day I do want to repatriate. I think you and I talked about that. And I said, Benfo, that is the dream. But while I'm in America, I'll be here developing the next generation. And that is what Dr. God is doing, building up the next generation of, I say African centered. I know you like, I don't like the word African no more. But I always say the next generation of African scholars, rooted in community and culture. They understand they understand that their purpose is to use engineering to build our communities, to protect our people, fortify our people. But anyway, that is definitely a dream of mine to repatriate. When I'm ready to repatriate, you already know I'm coming directly to you, Benfo. And so, family, make sure right now, before you, first of all, let me drop a bomb for you. Fire! 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 Stick that high fire on YouTube. I love the stuff that you say, the YouTube. But anyway, you came over here, you spit that high fire, and I think that you are just a wealth of information. Your family, you all are warriors. You come from that lineage, so that spirit that you have in you, the fight that you have in you, the drive that you have, the initiatives that you created. I can't say that I'm surprised of Benfo, given your lineage, and I see your daughter Alma. Alma is she's walking in her lineage, and she's a shining example of the Kambons. And so I appreciate all of the resources that you provided. And so, Benfo, when we get off of here, please make sure that you send me the links to all of those websites, the link to the other presentation that was, like you said, 3 hours, and also a link to your PDF, which was like a response to the whole idea of 1619. If you could send me like those 5 links, I'll make sure that all of those links are underneath the video. And I do want to ask you this. None of what you're doing is free. It's not free. Can we go to a BB Toomey to donate? There may be somebody that say, I can't make it here, I can't do this, but I would love to donate to what this brother is doing. I love what he's doing. So is there an option to donate on a bbtoomey.com?
There is, but we do have a free and paid model. So that's something I've always stuck by. So let me show you. So anybody can come to the site and they can register for the site and they can interact. They can do everything for absolutely free, right? So when you come here, you can come to the news feed. You see, you have the most magnificent member of the month. You can get points. That's called a BBCA, Black Gold points. So all of this is free. And you have the Abibi Mind News. Abibi Mind translates to Land of Black People. That's the other side about, not only is the term Africa not our term, once you come here, you realize it's the back door to get Arabs in. So until we start using our own terms, people in the United States, when you say Africa, you're only talking about Black people. Yes. But when you come to the continent, you know that you're excluding Black people in the so-called diaspora and you're including Arabs.
No, absolutely. I agree 1,000% with you, Benfo, and that's why when I publish papers, I make sure that I put a footnote so that we're clear on who I'm talking about. And I even saw that I didn't know you were the first person to put the K. I didn't know it was your family to put the K in African to distinguish. I thought that was you.
No, that comes about. As a matter of fact, I have a footnote in the papers where I've even used that in the past. Where people started to do that way back in the 60s because they were learning Kiswahili and other languages, and they realized that anytime you're making the K sound, it's spelled with the letter K, right, as opposed to the letter C. So no, that's not.
Oh, I thought that it was you to put the K in there to distinguish us from, like you said, other people who are on the continent, but that wasn't. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the correction. I appreciate the correction.
I can take credit for a lot of things. I can take credit for Abibi Toomey, Abibi Fahodie, a whole bunch of other things, but I can't take credit for that. That actually comes because, for me, if we're writing anything, we're going to write it in Medu Neter, right? But if you're using Latin characters, the ones who would write the Latin characters were oftentimes those who are coming from the crackers who, enslaved and quote unquote colonized us. And that is if you are writing it in Germanic or all these other things, they're going to use the letter C. And that's just how crackers decided to reduce it to writing. So, I'm not even overly nostalgic about, the letter C versus K, because as long as you're using the Latin script, it's not where we need to be, really. Again, This is our member of the month from last month. He's in the lead from this month. They also added the Baltimore area, Sister Nimkadi. So here you have people who are actually connecting through a BB Tumi, coming to get married through a BB Tumi. They just did a presentation. So a lot of stuff going on the site. So a lot is free, but then if you want to support, you can click here to click support a BB Tumi, and that will take you to a donate link. But what I'd like for people to do even more than donate, which is become a member on a BB Tumi. So you can click here on membership. And then once you do, you can sign up as a monthly member, a yearly member. And what we do that's paid, it subsidizes the free stuff that we do. We don't want to do only paid stuff. We want to do things for people who can't afford it.
Absolutely.
Even though I know a lot of people say they can't afford it, I know that they got an iPhone. A lot of people say they can't afford it. I know they got flat screen TVs and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, by the same token, if you can pay crackers for stuff, the only thing you should ever spend money on is stuff to get you liberated. So as I say, put your money where your liberation is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then once you become a member, there are lots of things in terms of discounts on the services that we provide. There are lots of things that you get in terms of access to the things that we provide, in terms of exclusives, in terms of benefits. We've signed an MOU with the UNIA, which my great-grandfather was a part of. So you can be a member of a BB Tumi and then also get your UNIA membership here. So with each one, when you click through, you'll see the benefits that you get. You have 16 steps of a liberating process that you can sign up for $50 a month. And again, what you paid for is subsidizes all the free stuff. You get official BB Tumi membership certificate, full access to all of the language courses, first right of refusal on a BB Tumi investment opportunities,
wow,
tour of a BB headquarters, exclusive deals on a BB Tumi store, fine art pieces, VIP access to a BB Tumi conference and a BB Fahodia festival, discount on PhD success, and many others. And it says all of BB Fahodia warrior benefits. That means that the level underneath has additional benefits, including 15% discounts, 10% discounts, and so forth. So each one progressively builds on another. And the key of this is that you can go through the 16 steps in the process to become Onimer and Dilogon, the owner of the 16 steps. Abibi Wanwa is even higher. We have nonprofit membership, small business membership, corporate membership. And again, what we do here, it subsidizes the way that we're able to help people get their citizenship and many of the other Black tacit things that we're doing on the ground. Employing people, I employ a good 10 people here in Ghana doing various things from being personal assistant to web design, to graphic design, to farming, to all the things that we're into. So again, when you're doing this, you're no longer funding Mark Zuckerberg, you're now funding building the land of Black people, Abibi Mine, Kemet, making Kemet Black again, and that's what it's all about.
Ashe. All right, OBENFO, we're going to have to close on out. OBENFO, I do appreciate your time, your mind, your wisdom, and your energy. So I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Family, before you get out of here, and I see that my audience family is in the building. Thick family, before we get out of here, make sure that you thumb up. I just need you to thumb up this discussion. Thumb it up. Okay, because OBENFO, you already know I'm not in the algorithm. they don't have my content in the algorithm. If I was on here doing some crazy stuff, I have thousands. I would have thousands of viewers and thousands of subscribers, but I'm not in the algorithm.
You couldn't call yourself Dr. Ma'at. You couldn't be up here twerking and doing whatever.
That part of OBENFO. And so anyway, family, I need your help. Thumb up this discussion. Thumb up this powerful presentation. Thumb up this powerful exchange, right? Of information. Thumb it up, and also share it. Like I said, we want to each one teach one. People are people because of people, and Ubuntu I am because we are. Let's come on. Let's share this information. And also, family, make sure that all of the links that I put under this video that you check them out. Right? Don't just scroll through it. Go to the description. Click on the links and check them out, family. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. OBENFO, do you have any contact information? Like, how do people contact you if they're like, I want this brother, to come over here. I want this brother to come on my platform. I want to do a presentation. I just want to get in touch with this brother. How can people find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me, and I'm sure you'll put it in the description on abibitumi.com. When you come to the site, you'll see that we have a chat feature where you can call people live, video call and audio call, as well as chat. So all of that is there. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. I know some people, if it's not a Cracker platform, they are not going to use it, but that's not the people who I'm talking to. So if I'm here, I can, come here. We're, chit-chatting in Ga right here, right? So you can come here. If you click here, start video call, you can start an audio call. So once you sign up for a BB2Me, that's the best way to connect with me.
Okay.
Apart from that, you can also hit the contact information here on repatriatetogana.com. You can also sign up for a consultation here, so forth and so on. You can also contact us through Decade of Our Repatriation. That's a BB2Me. Once again, you can contact us through the Sankofa Journey. So definitely check it out. Come here to contact. So yeah, there are multiple ways. We also have a chat feature here on a bb2metv.com where you can send messages. So I'm not hard to find. The only people who find it difficult to connect with me are the ones who refuse to leave a Cracker plantation. And because they're like, oh, he's not anywhere. No, I'm not anywhere, Cracker. And, if we're really serious about confronting these crackers, I'll share a quick anecdote. So today I had to confront a cracker here in the land of Black people of all places. So my daughter's in a robotics class, camp rather. And there was a little Arab cracker in the camp who was picking on all the Black children. So I rolled up in the camp with a cane. I said, Ahmed, you speak English, Ahmed? If you ever so much as look in the direction of my daughter, next time I see you, I'm not going to say anything. This cane, I'm going to write Ahmed in Arabic on it, and I'm going to whoop your little cracker behind. We got to confront crackers at all levels. And I was ready for the father, for the mother, for the whole Lebanon to come up in here because I don't play it. Y'all think, this is, and, we've been having this with Lebanon for 3,000, 4,000 years. Like we've been talking about this. They know it, but what us as Black people, we don't know it. So when the Lebanese come here and they spit on the ground and they make Ghanaians lick it up. When the Lebanese come here in Morocco, that's a restaurant here, they took the face of a Ghanaian and shoved the face into hot pepper. This was a news story. They, at the port, they would chain Ghanaians to a 40-foot container in the hot sun as punishment for whatever the thing was. This has been ongoing. If you look at the report of Winamun, it deals with going to Lebanon and the disrespect that was given to the Kometiu at the hands of the Lebanese. This isn't a new thing.
Right.
So when I see this little Lebanese coming up here trying to bully me, I didn't fly over 5,000, miles from Chicago to come here.
Right. For you to be doing this with my Omo, my child, my Watoto. No, hell no.
Like y'all can bring all of Lebanon in here. We got the arsenal. We ready to rock. So we got to confront crackers on all levels. We got to protect our children and be willing to do that, because we got to be about what we say that we're about. If we are about what you're doing with Meltrack, that's protecting our children in one way, but also we got to physically protect our children.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
Confront these crackers, we got to confront, and one way to confront the crackers is by divesting from their cracker platforms and exclusively using Black platforms. I'm one who's going to do that. A lot of people can't do that. But again, what you're doing is like you're operating. We have the Underground Railroad. Not everybody's going to be Nana Harriet Tubman. Some people may need to operate the house as close to the plantation so that people can find their way out. So we had the Underground Railroad. Now we got Repatriate to Ghana. That's the Undercloud Railroad. So you can fly on in and you can find your way back home in the way that you need to be and the way that your ancestors said. A point that I make on the slides is that, back in the day, you had people who were trying to get free on the continent. So if you say Africans, so Africans, well, what about those who are fighting against enslavement? What about the mother who had her child taken away? You understand? I guess she don't qualify as African because that don't fit your narrative, right? But, when you go to the entire presentation, you're going to get something that's very Black powerful, antelopes fighting each other. But when the lion comes up, he says, all y'all are dinner to me.
That's right. That's right. And with that said, family, that's right. With that said, family, let's get free or die trying. A BB Fahodie, a BB2Me, a BB Wan. See you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace and Black excellence. Hold on, Bob. Look, Benfo. I should have had my outro ready. You didn't got me all pumped up. My outro wasn't even ready, but it's ready now.
Let's combat and fight back with maltraction. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
There we go.